Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Night Sky Prince, and I am joined by an extremely special guest, someone that I have greatly admired for a long time, but also a really great friend of mine. She is incredibly awesome. Nowadays, she makes like a lot of Resident Evil, Capcom videos, but she is 100% passionate about Final Fantasy. Obviously, as you can tell by the name, the Sphere Hunter. Can you please tell us a little bit about your history of Final Fantasy, who you are, what you do? I'm sure you guys know more about her than you know about me, but please let us know about your stuff, please.
Before I start talking about myself, I will say that it has been very fun knowing you, NSP, over the years, because like I don't know if the chat like really understands that we have been friends for like mad long online, like
very long.
Maybe like 5 years.
Yeah.
We've never like I don't think we've ever really like collabed like this before, so it's definitely very special for me.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah, as a lot of you guys probably know, I did start my channel as the Sphere Hunter, and I did cover a lot of Final Fantasy content. My oldest uploads that you can find are like FF12 review and some other videos. I do plan on someday coming back to Final Fantasy with like big retrospective style videos. But yes, I did shift gears a little bit just because at the time of like FF15 Royal Edition, like that was like my first video that kind of like popped off in like a successful way. And I wanted to kind of use that momentum to like explore other games too that I really liked, because FF is like really like one of my favorite series. Like I have like all the shelves behind me are like pretty much Final Fantasy stuff, like Final Fantasy collectibles and stuff like that. I have a giant Keyblade like right here, so like I'm really into it. There's Cloud Barrett and Tifa. But yeah, I just kind of like early on I was like I'm gonna use the momentum from this FF15 review to kind of like branch out into Resident Evil content and like other like survival horror like games, because I was really into that stuff too. But yeah, did you ask like what my first like how did I get into Final Fantasy?
Yeah, I believe I did.
Okay, yeah. So probably really basic. Probably a lot of people had this experience, but yeah, FF7 on PS1 was my first game that I played, and I actually played it with one of my brothers, and we were in love with it. Like we fell in love with it, and you know we moved on to FF8 and 9. I don't have my copy of 8 anymore, but I do have my copy of 9, and it has seen better days. Like there's giant cracks in the jewel case and everything. So yeah, we went like eventually like we were so like in love with like 7, 8, and 9 that we I don't know if a lot of people remember this. Before the Pixel remasters, we actually did get a few PlayStation remasters of 1, 2, 4, and 5. 5 and 6. 1, 2, 5, and 6 on PS1. And we did go back to those with Final Fantasy, the original Final Fantasy Origin, by the way.
That's
Final Fantasy Origin.
That's not Jack Garland. That's not Jack Garland.
He might be in this game. You never know. He might, no
technically,
spoilers, but...
technically, he was an FF1. So
it's true. And anthologies, which is 5 and 6. So yeah, we went back and we played a few of the classics. I'm sure a lot of you guys like who were around back then, yourself included, NSP. It was really hard to get like a copy of Final Fantasy III that was Final Fantasy III, you know, because it was a different game at the time. And 4 was like really elusive just because it was really popular and really expensive, like on the platforms that it came out on. So yeah, from there it's been like an on and off love affair for sure, like especially in recent years where I'm kind of just like, okay, Square, you used to treat me real good, but like, what's going on nowadays? Like, I don't know. But yeah, I've always been a Final Fantasy fan. Like, I literally played Stranger of Paradise to my somewhat dismay. But I played it because it had Final
Yeah,
Fantasy on the
yeah.
box, you know.
That's when you know you're a real Final Fantasy fan. Right?
Yes.
Is it says
basically
Final Fantasy. I'm gonna play it no matter what. Like that's kind of the thing, and it's gotten me into a lot of games and even genres that I normally wouldn't touch just because of it. So, what's your favorite?
My favorite, and this is a two-part answer, and I'm sure you guys know what it's gonna be. It's FF10 and FF10-2, because they're technically like 10-2 is kind of like an expansion pack almost.
That's what it felt like, right? Yeah.
Yeah, especially back then when the word expansion pack was like what we used to say, you know.
You know,
But
it's funny too, because your answer kind of has to be that, right? Because you're a Sphere Hunter. But some people think like, oh, Night Sky Prince, so my favorite one's going to be 15, and then boy, is that wrong. Not that I don't like 15. I have a special fondness for Final Fantasy 15, but I wouldn't put it in like my like top tier. Like this is definitely what Sakaguchi envisioned, like magnum opus. Like, no, I'm just playing. Sakaguchi loves 15 though, for clarification. But that's just me being a pretentious FF guy. And being pretentious about Final Fantasy is what we're going to do here today.
Yeah, we sure are. Honestly, I could see why he would like that game a lot, because it really is kind of like a Final Fantasy 1 style game where you're like just set loose in like a big open world where you fight fantasy creatures. So like I could kind of see it from that perspective, but yeah.
In a weird way, like FF15 is like the closest game that we've had to like Final Fantasy 1 in like 25 years.
Yeah.
In like a lot of ways, kind of like that, just like that bare bone story about like 4 warriors of light, and they go on an adventure, and it's just very straightforward. Very straightforward story. So we got some pretty exciting news today talking about Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 16 is nearing the final stages of development. So we got this quote from Naoki Yoshida. He says, "We're in the final stages of development for a new numbered game in the series, Final Fantasy 16. We aim to deliver a comprehensive game full of story and gameplay." I hope there's gameplay in it. "Unlike an online game that involves many players at the same time, FF16 offers a different experience where it focuses on the individual player and immerses you in the story. I think it's a very fleshed out story for those who have grown up and realized that reality isn't kind to you and have drifted away from Final Fantasy. We hope that FF16 will be a game that can bring back a new passion that you once had with the series."
Oh my god, that is like, he's like talking directly to me.
Yeah.
In that quote. Oh my god.
I said the same thing. I like the moment like Audrey had tweeted it out, I was like, wow, very cool of Yoshi P to talk directly to me with this thing.
Right? God. By the way, shout out to Audrey. Very cool.
Yeah, I know. She does so much great work. I mean, I remember back in the day where we would get like, you remember getting like Famitsu scans, and like they was just covered in like Japanese text, and we didn't know what the any of that said. We were just and we didn't have anyone to like really translate it. And there were some translations, but they were really sketchy back in the day, and no one really knew what was good. And so I'm just really thankful that we have her. So, basically, what I want to ask you is that with the game coming soon, what are your greatest hopes and concerns for it?
If that quote is anything to go by, I'm just like really hoping that it's those things for sure. Just having a very fleshed out, complete story with an interesting cast of characters, an interesting world that I want to care about. Because obviously, you know, in the past couple years, you know, whether it be like a game like FF15 or like a Stranger of Paradise or even like a Type 0, games like those games, they have like the Final Fantasy vibe and like the aesthetic, the look for the characters, but a lot of the time those games will just like often throw characters at you and they'll either disappear immediately or they'll just stay around for far too long and just be like, you know, getting on your nerves and just they just won't be fleshed out at all.
Mm.
The gameplay experience I'm really curious about because it does seem like it's a hack and slash like action game.
Mm.
But I do wonder if it is like, and maybe there is info about it that I'm just missing out on. I do wonder if it is going to be like more of an open world experience or like an open-ended like zone experience, kind of like a classic Final Fantasy, where it's like you're about to go through this loading gate to like a whole area that's like contained. Like honestly, like if it is something like that, that would be kind of cool, kind of refreshing from like just the endless like open world trend that we're like every game is trying to go for now. But and arguably like FF7 Remake was doing some things similar to that, a little bit more like level based, chapter based. But yeah, I'm hoping that he can deliver. Him and his team can deliver on all of the things that were said in that quote. And if like FF14 is anything to go by, like I'm sure they will deliver. Like they will at least like, at the very least, the story will be cool and have you like hooked and like, you know, addicted to the characters and stuff like that. Yeah.
Because I know you're struggling with A Realm Reborn right now, and
Yes.
so I was actually very much in that same ship, and my friends, they had to beg me to play Final Fantasy 14, and this is kind of like how it always goes. And I genuinely do think that they need to do some kind of like overhaul to A Realm Reborn. I might actually do a full video on this, but I was like, because I had played A Realm Reborn back when it came out in 2014, and however boring and grindy that A Realm Reborn is to you now, it was tremendously more so, because at least now you can actually play straight through the story. Like A Realm Reborn had like a whole bunch of other like extremely grindy crap in it, like back in the day, that made it such a slog to get through. And I was thinking kind of like back on that game, right? So I had finished the base game and everyone just begged me to come back. So all I had was like the patches for A Realm Reborn, and the patches, they were okay. Nothing really to write home about. And then the moment I got to Heaven's Word, that's when I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Now I get it now, right? And it's actually most of the staff that worked on Heaven's Word. They're the ones who are writing the story. The co-director for Heaven's Word is working on this, and Yoshi P has even said that like Heaven's Word is basically, he said this before 16, and it's so funny because he was like, I'm not working on Final Fantasy 16 before the game was announced, but if I was, it'd probably be something like Heaven's Word.
Oh my god.
He was lying the whole time.
Yeah.
But back to 16, like with Ryota Suzuki working on it. I know you're a very big Devil May Cry fan. So
yes.
And you love DMC5, yes?
Oh yeah.
So how excited are you to have him working on 16? And are you okay with the idea of it not really having party members, but like really focusing more on just having like a single character and just being a good action game?
So is that like a confirmed detail? Do we know if there's like absolutely no party members at all?
We do not know if that is a confirmed detail. Okay. That is just heavy speculation that people have been running wild with.
Yeah. So I think I would be okay if there were no party members, just because I'm so used to games like Devil May Cry. But obviously, like if it has Final Fantasy on the box, I would like to have some party members involved. Just not even like from a gameplay perspective, but just from like a narrative. You know, it'd be easy to like have a group of characters to go on a journey with and like bond with. That was the literal strongest aspect of 15. You know, if you were just playing as Noctis, like that would be a completely different video game experience.
Right.
But yeah, like Ryota Suzuki, like I'm a very big fan of all of the games that he's like been at the forefront of for combat. So like, you know, DMC4, 5. I believe he may have worked on Dragon's Dogma. I know that he worked on Onimusha Dawn of Dreams back in the day, which is really cool. And of course, like the Monster Hunter recent output, like World and Iceborne. So Like if it's anything like those games, like in its basic gameplay formula, which we've seen very little of so far, kind of feels like it is going to be like that. It's gonna be a slam dunk home run for me, I think. Like I'm gonna be so into it just because like I've always said like there back in the day, and you probably remember this, and I'm sure a lot of people in the chat remember this, but I did make a video about like FF16 where it was like what I want to see in FF16, and like when I got to the gameplay portion, that was like that's what I wanted, was like a real-time hack and slash battle system where you're 15 was the reference point at the time, where you're not just holding the button down to do the combo, where you're actually tapping out the button in like succession,
Right.
like Devil May Cry. And I think the example I used at the time was like Nino Kuni 2, because that was like the closest thing to the game that I wanted, where it actually had like a battle system that had combos in it, where you can like combo your magic into your physical attacks. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the 16 trailer, where it's like, it's very apparent that like there is a lock-on button, because there's a shot where he's like shooting fireballs with his left hand and moving around in like strafing around the Marlboro like Nero, and he looks exactly like Nero, like the animation set. And that got me like so excited. And I think like I have a feeling they're not going to do this, because it's like super high level like pro player stuff for Devil May Cry. But if they like sneakily insert like jump canceling into the game, which is like the most galaxy brain like combo of all time, like I want to see combo videos for a Final Fantasy game, like Combo Mad FF16. Like, can you imagine that? Ugh, it would be so sick. So yeah, I'm really excited at the aspect, like the idea of a like a real-time hack and slash battle system. I think Ryota Suzuki is like the perfect guy to get for this gameplay formula. That being said, I would really like to see party members in the gameplay as well. I think you could just do so much with having like a dragoon, like a permanent dragoon, like a permanent healer, while you're like the freelancer or whatever, like just doing kind of everything. So yeah, like that, I'm definitely into it. Like
the idea, I guess, or what I struggle with like a lot of action RPGs, is that you kind of have this issue where you either create a game that is a little, or how should I put this? Your AI party members, they either end up being too smart and they make the game a little too easy, or they're too dumb and they do nothing, right? And I feel like it's very hard to incorporate AI party members in a way that makes them feel like I'm not babysitting, right? Because it's better actually to make them a little dumb than to make them too intelligent and they make the game easy, right? So most of the time, they'll kind of opt to make the AI like a little bit dumb so that you do have to carry them, because it's better to have that there and have the actual challenge there than to make them too smart. I think Final Fantasy VII Remake probably has like the best balance of any party-based combat game that I've ever played. But even then, there are still times I'm like, Barrett, why are you standing in the AoE?
Yeah, like what are you doing?
Yeah,
I know. And then you have that like that dilemma of like, oh god, I need to like switch to Barrett, move him behind cover, but while I did that, Cloud went into the AoE. Yeah. I'm not controlling him anymore, and you're just like, oh my god.
Yeah, that happened to me so many times. Yeah,
I do think you're right though, where like F7R is like the perfect balance of having full control over the battle in like the individual attacks that you do, but having the freedom to either directly control your party member or just give them commands. And I kind of hope that if there are party members for 16, there are buttons that do that on the controller. But we have seen with Suzuki's like other battle systems that dude uses every button on the controller for one character. Like if you played DMC5, like V, oh my god, like you literally have to hold the controller like this
Yeah.
and like press all the buttons with all of your fingers. It's insane. Like
Yeah. If I don't have to have like a weird grip, then it's not a good action game.
yeah, exactly. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a lot of potential, but also some maybe some letdown like in the like traditional Final Fantasy mechanic department with like party members. But we'll see.
Right, because well, I'm trying to even think like where they can fit in, right? Because Clive's moveset already looks so busted, right? Because he has the summons, right? He can like pull out Titan's fists and just start pummeling a guy, which for an action game I think is just so cool. Like even the way like the Phoenix Wing comes out and he uses that to like combo too. I'm just like, oh my god.
When I saw
Yeah.
the Phoenix Wing, I kind of was like, it reminded me of like in DMC5, like the Sin Devil Trigger when you use the Devil Sword Dante, where like when you power that thing up all the way, like you hit like circle and like just like shadow blades will do like an uppercut for you while you're still on the ground. And I was just like, it looks like it's going to be really deep. Like it looks like if I can apply my Devil May Cry knowledge to it, I could probably do some crazy shit. But like that's also another thing too that they have to like balance out is making this combat system like really approachable for people who aren't like combo mad geniuses of Devil May Cry, you know?
Right.
So
I'm beyond.
I wonder how much of like the deeper minutia of the battle system will be presented in like a tutorial, or if it's going to be like Devil May Cry and it's like, oh, I played the game for 20 hours and I realized that I could jump cancel 3 times and like do like wave dash around the enemy and like keep comboing, you know? And no one ever told me that I could do that.
Like, see, like I want that level of tech that you can do in 16,
Yeah.
right? Like I feel like with Final Fantasy VII Remake, they got like a really good formula going, right? And clearly it looks like they're going to kind of split things up again, right? Because there's been so many battle systems that they have done since they kind of dropped ATB. And they they just really haven't stuck with anything. And I think Final Fantasy nowadays has a bit of it's a bit more renowned for changing up every single system every time, right? But back in the day, you know, the ATB system stuck around for a really long time, and they kind of just refined their turn-based system every single time. Whereas now they're trying out like a variety of different action systems, and I do kind of want them to stick with something. But now I think what's going to happen is that Final Fantasy 16 is going to have some hardcore fanboys of its combat system, and then Final Fantasy 7 Remake is going to have hardcore fanboys of its combat system, and I'm really wondering where they're going to like go from there in terms of how that's going to work out.
Yeah, because technically 16 is the mainline game in the equation, and I guess 7R is like, I guess it's being treated like a mainline release with like the production value, but maybe it's not viewed as a mainline game. It's more of like a side game / remake. So I wonder if like if 16 is a massive hit and people really identify with it, and like it does like 14 numbers and just like 14 levels of like memes where like the entire Final Fantasy fan base is like referencing 14 and loving 14 openly. Like if they will take the 16 combat system and go forward with it for their real-time action, you know?
Right. And it's so hard for me to say which one I'm going to prefer too, because theoretically I might prefer 16s, right? Because I really do love a 7R's combat, probably like one of my favorite combat systems of all time. But I just feel like 16 is going to have that like, I don't know, it's going to have that level of tech that you can spend like, you know, hours over the course of years just putting like, you know, time into it and doing combo videos and really interesting stuff. Not that you can't with 7R, but I feel like with some of the deeper hack and slash games, there is a lot more interesting. Not interesting. What's the word?
I'll say from my perspective, there's a visceral level of enjoyment
That's what I'm
in
looking
like
for. Yeah.
in discovering like, you know, you're playing as Dante and
Right.
you can like it's like, oh shit, I could cancel my my prop shredder like fucking pinwheel move into like a real impact uppercut. Like there is a
Right.
visceral level of enjoyment like just
Right.
figuring that out on your own. And I feel like this isn't even just a Final Fantasy thing. This is like a game industry wide thing. Like
Right.
just having the player like figure things out on their own is like really key to like
Right.
the longevity and like the replayability of a game. Like just really refining a battle system and not telling like anyone like all of the little tips and tricks and minutia of it, you know? So
Right.
I'm really, really hoping that 16 does stuff like that. I think it would be great.
Right. Like just general like gameplay discovery, right? Like with like Metal Gear Rising, there was a time where I discovered like, oh my god, you can cancel Armstrong out of certain attacks by doing these combos. I was like, whoa, that's so
Yeah.
cool, right? Because and like when I realized that, because like I actually like went out and like looked online to see how other people were playing him, and no one else was doing this, and I was like, oh my god, this makes me feel so cool because I just kind of like happened to like run into like, you know, just messing around with the boss fight. I just happened to run in the fact that, oh, if you do this and this, you can just completely cancel him out of the attack. And
Yeah.
I think that like 16's probably gonna have that degree of freedom. But I really do.
Oh my god, that's another thing that
Yeah.
we're not even mentioning.
Yeah.
The boss battles in this game could be like legendary status, like Devil May Cry boss fights. Like you
Yeah.
want like, and that's another thing too. Like I'm really hoping that we have like a human like level like grounded like rival character in this game that is kind of like a Virgil character, you know, who
Right.
maybe isn't the main villain, but like a recurring villain throughout the game. Like you could do a lot with that.
Yeah.
And just having like really legendary moments like that, like take the gameplay and the story and just put them together, you know? Like that, like there's 16 has a lot of potential. Like it's got a lot of
Right.
potential, and I'm
Yeah.
very excited for it. I'm the most excited for it in years that I've been for like Final Fantasy, you know?
Yeah.
So
This reminds me of something someone said in my chat not too long ago. They said that they hate fighting kaiju monsters in games because all it is whacking feet. And I'm like, yeah, it's so true. And I'm like, I so much prefer like smaller to like medium sized, but preferably humanoid bosses as opposed to like, you know, like just like big monsters, because it really
and
is just
that's another
whacking
thing
feet.
too, where it's really good that they got Ryota Suzuki because he is experienced with like making a character that can literally like Nero, like he could get up to Goliath's face like instantly, and you could just smack him in the face for like 10 minutes and feel like a god gamer, you know, like
Yeah, that's what I like in a good like action combat system. Frustrated Jacob actually makes a good point here. I'll reference the theory I shared when I was on. I think Ifrit's dominant will be a rival, and figuring out who he's working for will be a big part of the plot. Yeah. So we'll be chasing down maybe Ifrit's dominant, which will be really cool.
Yeah, because we kind of get like a scene where Ifrit is like kind of messing up people and like maybe ripping someone apart.
Yeah.
Like in one shot, which is like, God.
If you go like frame by frame, like when he rips that person, you can like see like the blood like kind of like squirt onto the screen.
Yeah.
And it's just like all right, before we move on from 16 though, release date prediction or window prediction.
I think we're probably gonna get a trailer soon. And we're gonna get a 2023, like early 2023 release.
I think that's the
window.
safest bet.
You know why I think this?
Why is that?
And this is just generally like going off of my Capcom knowledge. I feel like the stars are gonna align and we're gonna get like an FF7 remake and an RE3 remake situation where like two big ass publishers like put their games out at the same time. Because I feel like we're gonna maybe get a Resident Evil game like around the same time, like early 2023.
Oh,
so
interesting. That would be really unpleasant for you, actually, wouldn't it?
I'm definitely gonna make a FF16 video when it comes out. So
Yeah. I would hope that it wouldn't be a situation where they're, because didn't like, what was it? Was it RE2 or RE3? It was one of them that released at the same time as Final Fantasy VII Remake did. I can't remember.
it was the remake, yeah.
Yeah, and that was
And they were
like,
two games that removed a lot of content from their original game.
yeah.
You know? That
Oh,
was like,
no.
I honestly, like, that was like, there were some wild things happening in my personal life around that time, but those two games releasing and like just not having like giant moments, you know, like for RE3 it was like a few levels, you know, that I could maybe look past, but like FF7 Remake having a promise of like a whole other game that's gonna have the rest of this game that I like in it, like that was pretty rough to deal with. It was pretty rough to deal with.
Oh yeah, yeah. And actually, we'll come back to that thread, because that's something that I think we both have a lot to talk about with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we both had very unique journeys through Final Fantasy VII Remake, and weirdly enough, I think we may be like loosely on the same page, plus or minus now.
Yeah, I feel like we like our adventures like flipped, but now we're at the same point.
Yeah,
we're at the same point.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, before we get into that though, I gotta talk to you about Kingdom Hearts 4. I see your Keyblade in the background. I know you like Kingdom Hearts. I know you do. So Kingdom Hearts 4 was recently announced. The Nvidia leak kind of let the goose out early. What did you think of the trailer? And are you seeing the potential connections to Final Fantasy Versus 13 that me and many others are seeing right now?
Yes, I definitely see the connections. Maybe they're purely aesthetic connections. I hope not. I hope it's a little bit deeper than that. Yeah. But I did think the trailer was pretty cool. There were a few like little nuggets here and there of like, oh, maybe there's like Star Wars going on in the background there, which is like, I have always said I wanted Star Wars since since before KH3 came out. You know, like, oh, it would be so cool if there was like a Star Wars world and like a Final Fantasy character was like a Jedi version of themselves or something, you know, like, you know, back when Kingdom Hearts used to do kind of like cool things like that all the time.
Yeah.
No shade or anything, but yeah, shade. Yes, shade. No, I think KH4, it looks really cool. We definitely got like a little bit of like KH3 syndrome where that's definitely not real gameplay. I don't think that's real gameplay. I think that's just kind of like a concept trailer of like, this is what the gameplay could look like, you know? And this is like the vibe we're going for, the aesthetic we're going for. I did see like a bunch of people online having, I would say like justified fears in like the game going in like a more like realistic art style direction. So that I would say that could be them kind of like teasing, like, you know, exploring Disney's like on camera, like more realistic properties like the Marvel stuff or the Star Wars stuff. And I think, honestly, I think they would be stupid not to explore those properties, those IPs. Like, I would love to have Spider-Man as a party member. Like, can you imagine that? And it's like gritty, like 90s comic aesthetic Spider-Man, where like, oh my god, just seeing Sora in New York City is kind of like a crazy idea. Anyway,
right?
Cosplayers, whatever. Yeah, I would say to that like fear that doesn't exactly rule out like Kingdom Hearts 4 having a few levels that change the art style, you know, because we've had that too, where like, you know, KH2, like the Timeless River was like 1920s art style, and it's like one of the standout moments of that game. And then
you know why it stood out? You know why it stood out?
Why?
Because my boy Pete was in there.
Yeah. Giga Chad.
Go on.
Sorry about that.
No. I should apologize.
Yeah. But yeah, like KH3, we got the 100 Acre Wood, like had cell shading. So I think it's entirely possible that, you know, we might get an art style change for a few specific levels in KH4. But I think they are gonna lean more into that like realistic kind of art style for like the mainstay, or like sorry, the main event moments, which could be like Star Wars level or like a Marvel,
Right.
like Avengers level. But I think they're also gonna push that for like the Kingdom Hearts specific levels as well, that like progress the story of Kingdom Hearts, which I guess Sora is in like a weird limbo Tokyo.
Yeah, it's so basically the way it's described in the trailer. The English version of it calls it an afterworld, and the Japanese version of the trailer calls it the world of the dead. But it's also not the world of the dead for everybody, because there's the people who are there like like real living people, but the Kingdom Hearts characters who are there are dead. Something like that.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of, yeah, okay. Because the civilians in the trailer definitely look a little more like realistic, and the Kingdom Hearts characters look a little more Kingdom Hearts. So, that's interesting.
The Kingdom Hearts characters look like cosplayers, like out of a convention.
Yeah. But I think they definitely were kind of teasing that with the Verum Rex like DLC that they did for like Remind. And just like I don't remember if it was a secret ending, because I just played the main game on Proud. It might be a secret ending, like when like where you actually see that, like in the end, like he's like out in this like Shibuya like kind of area.
Oh, that's the secret ending for the base game.
Okay, yeah, I just played it on the hardest difficulty because the game wasn't that hard.
Wait, did you see? It really wasn't. Unless wait, did you wait for like the critical mode patch to drop? Have you tried that?
I haven't played it. No.
Oh yeah. I honestly,
I only played 2 and 2 Final Mix and Birth by Sleep on critical.
Yeah, I didn't. I kind of wanted to do it. I got like a quarter of the way through the critical mode, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. And unfortunately, I didn't get through the data fights either, because I was just like, okay. So I ended up watching them.
I didn't.
They're really good. They're honestly really good. Many people would say they're probably even better than Kingdom Hearts 2's data fights. They're really well constructed. You've seen the scenes after when you beat Yozora, right? Like what happens?
Oh yeah, where you get the literal like Versus 13 remake trailer.
shot for shot. I'm talking about it. It is like one of the most accurate remakes in video games, where he literally went through shot for shot and recreated that scene. And honestly, what's even more weird is that a lot of the music is basically versus music, or 15 music, as you might want to call it, but it's been like slightly tweaked to basically it sounds like the same music, but then not quite. And even the music in like the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer, like if you actually listen to it, it's actually a similar song that was used in like a Versus trailer, but then they just kind of slightly changed it a little bit, and then so it's like a different song now.
Yeah. I think they're definitely gonna go in that direction, where it's maybe not like a complete like revival of Versus, but maybe they'll cherry pick like some ideas for what that original story was gonna be. And we also like I'm gonna pull up the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer right now. Hold on a second. I'm doing a live react. Holy shit!
Please go for it.
Because we get like a kind of like a Stella looking character, right?
Yeah. Apparently she's from the mobile games, and what was really funny is that like, I guess the Western marketing team didn't even know, or they tried to market it differently, but they put her as a brand new character. Her name is Strelitzia, which guess what Strelitzia means? Star.
What does it mean?
It means star.
God. Oh my god, they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. Oh my god.
Strelitzia means star. Guess what she's wearing, by the way? All white dress.
Yeah. I'm looking right now.
Yeah.
She's got a very similar look to Stella at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Ugh.
it's even more funny too, where if you go back and watch Verum Rex, Yuzora also has a girl that looks vaguely like Stella. And actually, let me see if I can actually find the picture for you, and then show.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and like she
honestly,
also
like that girl like looks way more like Stella than the quote unquote new character, but she definitely is giving like Stella vibes without a doubt.
So we don't have a name for her, but in the final world, she's actually, I don't know if you remember this, but in the final world, which is like that big blue expanse that Sora's in, like toward the end of the game, when he like dies, but not the actual death that he's going through right now, but the different normal Kingdom Hearts death. And he's in like the final world. And like there's this place where you can talk to like these stars, and her name like is called like Nameless Star. And it's supposed to be this same character.
Yeah.
And if you talk to Nameless Star, I think this is like optional because you can completely skip over it. But if you talk to her, she says that her love has been transformed and he's no longer recognizable from how he used to be. And clearly she's talking about
very Noctis.
Yeah,
Very
clearly
like,
she's talking about like Yuzora and how he's supposed to be Noctis, but he's not.
Oh my god, they're gonna do it. And you know what? Like, yeah, do it, because I've always wanted it, you know? And if we get it in some form, like, it's not gonna be that like original, like super dark, like kingdom that worships death like storyline. But it's gonna be there. It's gonna be there in spirit. It's like a spiritual remake of Versus 13.
What I like about it, principally, right, is kind of this idea of Nomura going against the man, you know? Like
yeah. Like clearly he's wanted to tell this particular story for a long time. And at this point, like, I feel like he's like personally been through a lot with the games that he's made over the years. So why not just give him this? Like, give him the one W. Come on, where he's like just fully in control of his destiny with this game idea.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I personally can't imagine working on a game or on an idea for 7 years and then having it taken from me, right? And especially if I view it as like my best work. This is my magnum opus. This is like the best thing that I've ever come up with, right? And if you like read like this interview with him from back then, with him asking about like why he was removed from 15, he literally just says it was the company's decision and I cannot say more than that. I was like, oh.
So like it's very clear to me, at least, and everyone else, that like Kingdom Hearts 3, like it almost feels like just his like way to sneak Versus 13 out into the world, like through a property that is successful, that is proven to be a massive hit around the world, and he's like, I'm doing it. Like, I'm just gonna go for it. Like, fuck it.
and has complete control over it, right?
Yeah.
So no one can step in and tell him that he can't do that aside from Disney. And Disney's not going to do it because clearly they haven't stepped in for any of the other original Kingdom Hearts stuff that he's done.
They trust him at this point, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. So
honestly, like, you wanted to hear like a funny like Disney like piece of trivia. I have gotten word on the street that like Disney was not very happy with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite when it came out.
Really?
Because it didn't sell well.
Right.
Kingdom Hearts has consistently sold very well, no matter what it is. So I feel like as long as that's happening and he doesn't like do anything psychotic, like, you know, kill Mickey Mouse or whatever, they're gonna just trust him with whatever.
He almost killed Goofy in 2.
I still haven't recovered from that.
Why is that? That's like that's the best Kingdom Hearts moment to me. I'm gonna offend like a whole bunch of Kingdom Hearts fans. Everyone else cried when like Xion died, or like whoever else died. I got hit by Goofy. When Goofy got hit by that boulder in Kingdom Hearts 2, I lost it. Now, Donald in 3, when Donald collapsed in 3, I knew he was gonna be okay. Like, I knew he had just like exhausted. I'm like, he ain't dead.
He's tired. He wants to go to bed.
Yeah. But when Goofy got hit by that rock, I don't know what it was, right? Like, obviously Goofy's not gonna die. They're not gonna kill Goofy, right? But I guess in that moment, I was just in such disbelief, and the way Sora reacted to it, yeah, it just felt so genuine.
Strong visual.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just like, and I'm just like, there was also part of me too that was just like, yo, I can't believe that they got away with, like, giving Goofy blunt force trauma to the head with a giant boulder. And it was like, all right, they were like, yeah, go ahead, do it.
Blunt force trauma. Poor Goofy. Oh my god.
I mean, like, pitching like even like reasonable things to Disney seems really tough. Imagine walking into like the boardroom and like, yo, we're gonna drop a rock on Goofy's head. What are they gonna do?
And you're gonna think he's dead for at least 10 minutes.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it's gonna be the best scene in the whole game. And
honestly, that couldn't have been easy. So I applaud him for at least getting away with that. But yeah, so the original point, like, I'm sure that like KH4 is definitely gonna, if not be like a spiritual remake of Versus, like at least open the doors to having Verum Rex be its own game, Right.
I think that's what he's trying to pitch, right?
I feel like it would be so easy, like, to have that, because you could market it as like not a mainline Kingdom Hearts. Like you can be like Verum Rex subtitle a Kingdom Hearts story or something like that, and it'll get people excited at like the mere concept of like, oh, can we get more of these like Kingdom Hearts stories, in the future? Like, I think that would be kind of cool. Yeah.
So what do you want to see Kingdom Hearts 4 improve upon over 3?
Definitely make the game harder, because it was like baby mode, easy mode on the hardest difficulty, which at the time was Proud, which is what I played. I'm sure Critical is like a much better.
It's much better, yeah.
I didn't go through it, unfortunately, so that's my caveat. But yeah, I think I'm not sure what the general consensus is on this, but I wasn't the biggest fan of having you play through the Disney worlds in one go. I kind of love having the comeback story, where like you play like an hour, and then you settle the conflict in Agrabah or whatever, then you leave and you go do other things, and you see a lot of like you see more content of the game, but then you get word like, oh, Agrabah's in trouble again, we got to go back and see what's going on. It felt like the Disney worlds in all of the games that came before it were more like I guess like fleshed out, more like believable. Like you had a tangible reason to come back, where in Kingdom Hearts 3, and I know a lot of like completionist players would probably prefer this. In Kingdom Hearts 3, you just do the content, and you could stay there for as long as you want, 100% it, and then never come back. I like that idea of like coming back and being like, oh god, it's like there's like a new boss in town that I've got to like take down or whatever, because it really reminded me of like classic JRPGs where you had like more of an incentive to go back, and it felt like you were on this big journey where the worlds were like connected, or like in other games cases like the towns were connected. It felt like you were in like a world,
right?
So that's definitely one thing I hope they improve upon. Another thing too is just like that's the thing. Like I wasn't like the biggest fan of like the Pirates of the Caribbean world, which I know might be heresy, because like I know a lot of people really liked it.
No, I agree. I know some people really liked it, but I fucking hated it. It did not work for me.
I wasn't a fan of that world, and I wasn't a fan of like Big Hero 6 or Tangled. So like, I don't know, just some like cooler like Disney worlds, which I mean, if they're showing off Star Wars, like that's already a pretty good sign that we're gonna get like brand new content for the game. Because like the other thing is too, like Pirates of the Caribbean, we went there already, like in a previous game. So while it was really cool to see it as this big, like, you know, Assassin's Creed Black Flag type game, like we had already been to Port Royale and stuff like that. So just like more content, like different Disney worlds that we haven't been to yet. And just like, I guess more incentive to come back to them instead of just like, you know, completing it one and done, never have to come back. Because I felt like that really affected the pacing of Kingdom Hearts 3 overall.
Tremendously.
That was my biggest issue. Yeah,
Right.
just like, it just felt like you're in the world, you're locked in, you can't do anything until you finish the Disney world, and then you get to go on to the next thing. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm kind of bored of this
Right.
place. I want to go do other things. And then like, as you well know, as everyone knows, it's just like, oh, now we're just dropped into this like 10-hour stretch of game that is the game that I want. You know, like the ending of the game where like all the questions are answered. Hypest shit you've ever seen in your life. You're using everyone's username from Cross as like a bullet in a bullet hell. It's like the hypest shit of all time. Like space that stuff out throughout the game. Don't just like make me play 30 hours of a game that I'm not that engaged with and then drop me into the thing that I've wanted from day one, you know?
Right.
From the start.
Yeah, and that's, I think that all the Kingdom Hearts games have like some degree of meandering, but I think the two like really struck the balance. And the reason the second world visit works is because you would spend like an hour to like an hour and a half in a world, and then you're done, and then you move on to the next world and the next world, and then you come back, right? And then you get to see that world. And because it's broken up in that way, it makes the game flow better. Whereas in Kingdom Hearts, you're probably stuck in a world for like 2.5, like 3 hours, right? Which is kind of a long time to be on a level, and that slows the pacing like way down. And then it's also just cool to like go to a world, solve the problem, right? And then go back and check in on how those people that you helped are doing and like what new developments have happened there, right? And that structure is really, really good. That's why that structure works so well, is because when you break it up, you're able to kind of have growth even in the Disney worlds, right? Like I think like one of my favorite worlds in like Kingdom Hearts 2 was like the Mulan world, right? The way they structured and paced the Mulan world was like, it was godly. That was like really good. Apex of Kingdom Hearts, right? Like this is Kingdom Hearts to me. This is like Kingdom Hearts done right. Is the way like the Mulan world is done. Because like the first conflict is kind of like a bit of a mix in the movie, and then the second you have like the Organization 13 member visit, and you have to fight him. Which is basically what a lot of the second visits are predicated on, is the Organization 13 member being there. So you'd have like the generic Heartless fight, right? The big, goofy looking Heartless. And then you'd come back and then you'd fight like an Organization member. And then you do that. And then that second world visit for most of these worlds would build up to, you know, the end game, the final world. And then on top of that, you also had like multiple visits for places like Twilight Town and Hollow Bastion. So you'd actually have like these little segments that would make you feel like the story was progressing in between. Whereas in 3, you really just got told, well, you don't have the power of waking yet, so go play with Elsa.
Yeah. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, there wasn't really like a hub world in 3, right? Like there was like in where like Traverse Town was the hub.
Not really.
In the first game. And,
not really.
Yeah, like this. Yeah. I totally forgot about that. And yeah, to your point, like I forgot like how KH3 was paced, like with its levels. But yeah, like you get, because it's just like one shot, it feels like they are mixing in like the not as important part of like the generic Heartless that is like usually summoned by the villain of the Disney World, with the important part, which is the Organization 13 member. But in 3, it makes even less sense because we've done that all already, you know, like we've done all of the Organization members already. We know like what happens. So like, why are they even back at all? What's going on? If you're a fan of like the Kingdom Hearts games that are on consoles, not really like on phones or like any of the like extended universe stuff, like you're missing context for like why characters are coming back, or even in some cases there might not even be context. It's just,
Right.
oh, I'm back. You're like, okay, great.
Right. And
Cool.
I think that 4 kind of needs to soft reset things a little bit, and I think that they have a good opportunity to do that with this being on the other side of reality, because you get to sort of filter out like a whole bunch of characters, right? Because not everyone's going to be able to go to this other side of reality, right? So you're only going to be able to focus on a handful of characters that are established, which is really good for anyone to be able to jump in here as their first place. And so far in the developer interviews, they've been saying that they want Kingdom Hearts 4 to be a good entry point for new people. So,
and like, yeah, I think it will be. Like, I feel like enough people complained about 3, like literally all the stuff that we just talked about, for them to ignore the criticism and like the backlash, whether that be light or heavy.
right.
You know, like however they take it, to not like do that again for KH4. Like, I feel like things are probably hopefully gonna be like way more well paced and balanced for that game. So
I do too.
Excited for it nonetheless.
Yeah. So speaking of Nomura and like what he's got going on with some fans dub Nomura's Revenge. I don't know if I quite I don't know if I agree with that quite or not, but it looks like Yuji Naka is having his in court. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard. I assume yes, but for those who haven't, Yuji Naka is suing Square Enix over Balan Wonder World. Sorry, everyone. In the last video, I called it Balan Wonderland. They should change the title to Balan Wonderland immediately, because that's a better title. If I was the director, maybe the game would have turned out better.
Oh my God.
No, but seriously, Balan Wonder World was a game, unfortunately, and it did really awful. I'm talking about like Metacritic is like 36 to like 40, depending on like which platform you're looking at it on. It's really, really bad. And he basically accused them of pushing the game out unfinished and removing him from the project unjustly. And he basically says that Square Enix doesn't care about games or their fans. Thoughts?
That's very scathing. That's really intense. Like, that is just like, but you know what? Like, I mean, I wasn't in his shoes, but just like based on like games that we've gotten like pretty recently, like I'm inclined to believe him to an extent, you know? I mean, that game was definitely rushed out of the door. Like, it tells, like, you can tell, like, in every aspect of the game's design, you know, like, just, I think there was a quote where, like, they used, like, a YouTuber's version of, like, a cover song instead of the actual song that they made for the game or something like that. And it's like, what is happening? Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah.
And like, you're not gonna credit the guy that made the song for the game. Like, what is going on? It seems like Square Enix definitely didn't care about this game. And correct me if I'm wrong, but like Babylon's Fall is also a Square Enix game, right? Like, published by them?
Yes.
And do you know what else was published by them? The fucking Avengers game.
Yeah.
Which
that was developed by one of their studios too. So that's all of them. Yeah.
And that game like is the most like piecemeal, like unfinished, buggy mess you could ever see. Like, aside from like Cyberpunk or whatever. But yeah, I think if it's not like a first party in-house title like Final Fantasy, they're not gonna, they don't care like that much about it. Like, they're just, it almost feels like they're they're just like churning this shit out, like to maybe meet like a fiscal year quota or something. Obviously, like I don't know anything. Like I don't work for Square Enix or anything like that. So that's me just like literally spitballing. Yeah, someone in the chat said tax write-off games, like 100%. That's what those games feel like. They just feel like, get it out of the door quick, like we need a fiscal year, like whatever.
Yeah.
So, Left Alive as well. Yeah, someone else, Roxas 180 said in the chat, like Left Alive was another game that came out years ago at this point, but that was like, and The Quiet Man, like that was another game that was just like totally unfinished. Yeah. And like, okay, this might be a little controversial, what I'm about to say, but like...
Do it.
You know what I'm gonna say.
Do it. Do it.
if we are going by like this unfinished word, this game is technically unfinished.
Because
this game this game is a finished game. This one really isn't that finished. If I'm being quite honest with you.
We're gonna get into it.
It's a finished part of a game.
No.
I think they just have an issue with like releasing games like piecemeal, and Yoshida is like, he's like on the board of directors, right? But he also makes games.
Yeah.
So it's like it feels like he's kind of in his own like world in Square Enix, where he could just kind of be like, I'm gonna make a finished product, you know?
Yeah. And that's kind of like what's cool.
Else,
yeah, that's what's like cool about it.
Seems like everything else is kind of just like up for just push it out of the door, like quota, you know?
Yeah. And that's kind of like what's cool about like his situation is that he controls the money and he's making games too, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of
controls the money and making the money.
Right. and so that puts him in like a very good situation because he is able to not short his own stuff. And he has been able to get more and more budget approved recently too, which is why, I don't know if you know this, but they're actually in the process of overhauling the entire game's graphics right now. This is a result of the game going viral right now. And my God, the game just, it's a pretty game artistically, but it is dated. The moment you look at it, you can tell, yeah, this was made for PS3. And I'm very excited for that. But in terms of the situation, I think Rose Eclipse here says, I think the Yuji Naka versus Square situation is complicated. On one hand, Naka's known to kind of be an asshole to work with. I've heard that from many people.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, and he publicly stated that the director of human resources and other devs wanted him off. So maybe Naka was giving them quite a lot of trouble, but it could just be Square being shit. I'm not dying on either hill. That's kind of what I feel, because there were some people, because when I made the video, I kind of just put it out there as, this is what Yuji Naka says, and this is kind of, maybe Square is doing whatever, right? So I didn't want to firmly say one way or the other on the situation, but I can say, to me, judging by some of the recent releases that we've had from Square, like Babylon's Fall, Chocobo GP, Avengers, all of these other titles that they pushed out, and if you really want to get into it, maybe this game, Final Fantasy 15, where you have to buy the DLC to figure out how the guy went blind, because you don't figure
that
out.
Okay, that all right. Oh my God, okay. I watched your video. I think it was your latest video where you actually brought that up, and it blew my mind, because I always felt like there was something weird about that, but I don't know why I never like put two and two together, that it was like, oh, it's just they wanted me to spend more money to like figure out why he went blind.
Right.
This is bullshit. Like, what?
Yeah. You have to pay. You have to pay. Like, to put this like in the context, this would be like if they had like Final Fantasy 7 and it was just like Aerith died, but you have to buy the Aerith DLC to figure out like why she died. That's basically what they did there in Final Fantasy 15. Like if you don't buy the
Cloud blacks out and then wakes up later, surrounded by everyone, and Aerith just isn't there.
Right.
What happened? Oh, she's not with us anymore, Cloud.
Right.
And like that's it. Like that's all you get.
Yeah. Then that's basically what happened, right? And I think Dream Poem in chat says you're giving them ideas for the remake. But that's basically what happened, right? Like you have to pay to figure out why something happened, which I think is like it's kind of worse because we all joke like Aerith Lives DLC $20, but I don't know, like I find that less offensive than like find out how Aerith died or find out why Ignis went blind. And the DLC, the only one that wasn't really consequential was like Gladio's DLC. But in like Prompto and Ignis's DLC, especially Ignis's DLC, Ignis's DLC was like heavy lore stuff. Like heavy lore stuff
it's also like one of the most hype moments in the game that I would have loved to just have in the game. You know, like you get to that point, Noctis gets messed up, and then the game just switches to Ignis's perspective, and he goes through that entire journey. Like it's hype. Like he puts the ring on his finger. He sacrifices his sight. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Buy it later.
It was I was gonna say it's like it's probably the best moment in the entire continuity of 15 is episode Ignis. And like I
agree.
It enhances that whole story so much that to the point of where I don't think you could have removed episode Ignis. I understand episode Gladio and to a lesser extent episode Prompto, but like episode Ignis was like that was like if you don't even play like Final Fantasy 15, just play episode Ignis because it's the best piece of content.
It's so good.
And that fight with him and Mavis, and they're both oh god.
It gives you so much context for like the stakes, like what's at stake here. Like if Noctis doesn't complete this journey, you know, it's like it's just gone, like it's missing from the actual game, and it's like it would enhance it so much more if it was actually there. And like you said, like to a lesser degree Prompto, but like Prompto's story is also pretty tragic. It's pretty hard hitting, and that's something you have to buy later too. It's just so ridiculous to me that it's like, oh, you want to know like how evil the enemy faction is? Like they're literally cloning like a guy over and over again, and like one of your best friends is a clone of this guy, you know? And like in the game, the payoff is like he just tells you like in like one sentence, and you're like, all right, like who cares? When you see it, it's so much more hard hitting. Like Prompto goes through this journey of like self-discovery and like a meaningful outcome. But he kind of literally just ranting about 15 now, where like the original was like Yuji Naka. And I want to say, someone in the chat said all of the games that I brought up were like, you know, made by other teams. Square Enix is like a multi media corporation, so like, you know, like different teams work differently. So like to that point, yes, I agree with you. It's just like there's too many examples of like them just pushing games out that are clearly unfinished, to where when Yuji Naka says like they don't care about games, like it hits hard, you know. But also at the same time, I have heard that Yuji Naka could be difficult to work with.
I have too. I mean,
there's always two sides to every story, so we've got to keep that in mind.
Rose Clip here.
I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm not taking any side.
That's how I feel too. I'm not taking anyone's side on that, but I will say I think there is probably something to Yuji Naka's claim, is what I will say. I'm not gonna say that Square Enix probably didn't dismiss him for like good reasons, but I think that Yuji Naka is probably saying something that does have truth somewhere in the pudding, so to speak.
Can I bring up like a very brief story really quickly?
Feel free, please.
It's not completely unrelated, but it might shed some light on this particular situation. Like with all of those games that we brought up, like like especially the ones that are not like first party like or whatever, like in-house development teams. So back in the day, Capcom put out Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City, which is like it's a very like generic, like in its gameplay, it's like the most like trend chasing generic like squad based third person cover shooter where like oh the characters have like different abilities and it's pretty basic. I like it because I think it's pretty charming and it's got like really cool lore stuff for Resident Evil and like cool fan servicey moments. But that game was made by Slant Six Games, which is like a Western company, and they were, you know, contracted to make the game for Capcom. They had all of these ideas in like pre-production that they wanted to capitalize on. They couldn't really do all of them because Capcom gave them 1 year to make the game. They had 12 full months to make this game. And it literally explains why the game released in its like very buggy, unfinished, like
oh my god,
generic ass state.
Oh my
and like
god.
when you have the context of that, it's like, oh my god, I can't believe they actually made the game the way it is, like with the amount of polish in a single year. So all of those games that we were talking about with Square Enix, like it could be a case of that where like maybe they promised them like a few years of development and then maybe something happened where they were like, okay, 1 year, you got to get it out of the door right now. Like we don't have the money to like keep giving you because we have all these other things like going on. So it could also be that
interesting
too, because that has happened historically with like Japanese companies outsourcing games. But yeah, just
so I actually have a theory about Babylon's Fall in particular and like what happened there. So you know how like, do you remember like the first trailer? Like I remember looking at the first trailer and I was like, oh, this is cool. This is cool as hell. And I was like, oh, this is
a different game.
Yeah. I think what happened is that game was totally never meant to be a games as a service game. I think what happened is that Square's higher ups came in and they were like, we want you to rework this as a gas model game. And I think that's what, because Platinum's never made something that's missed that hard. They've never done that.
Yeah, they've definitely had misses, but that was like, that game in particular was like a very, very clear, like, oh my god, what are you guys doing? Like, what's happening right now? What's happening?
Right. And I think that they had to rework the game somewhere in the middle. Maybe I'm not that deep into Babylon's Fall development lore, but it seems to me with their obsession with games as a service, that seems something that might have been likely to do that.
It makes you wonder almost like maybe that can explain why like Bayonetta 3 like took so long to like even get revealed. Like maybe there was some internal struggle like with like higher ups being like, oh, this should be a games as a service, you know, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, there's I mean there's something going on there, and Platinum's even talked about like changing their kind of business model or something. So I don't even know what's going on with them. I really love Platinum. I hope they're okay.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I hope they're okay too.
Yeah.
I've heard some things from friends that, you know, might be orbiting around the building, you know.
Oh, I see.
I didn't say I know anyone that works for Platinum. But
I like heard the ding on that.
Yeah, ding.
So Final Fantasy VII Remake is something I kind of want to segue into here, because I think we both have very interesting the story that me and you have with Final Fantasy VII Remake is very, very weird, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, to say the least.
Can you tell everyone about like your first experiences playing with it and how you feel about it now?
So my first experience playing it, I got it early for review. You know, thank you, Square Enix. Don't cancel me, please. For what I said literally a minute ago, but
me.
Yeah, I got it early for review, and I played I played about half of the game, and I, like you, like I have a lot of friends that also do the same thing. Some are content creators, some are games journalists. I had a games journalist friend who got the game even earlier than I did come to me and just ask me, "Oh, have you played FF7 Remake yet?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I'm playing it right now. Like, please don't spoil anything." And then they went on and spoiled like the whole thing for me. And I was like, "What the So it immediately like kind of turned me off from the game, and I was so frustrated because without seeing the game, I thought it sounded really dumb. And I was like, well, I don't have to play the game anymore. And I was like really like against the game without like having finished it. Because I felt like my enjoyment was robbed from me, where it was like, oh, I don't get to see like these new story beats, these new like twists in the narrative firsthand. It's like literally all of it was like spoiled in like a gigantic essay of like why this guy thought it was stupid. And how it's like, oh, it's a sequel. It's not really a remake, it's a sequel. Whoa. And I was just like, oh, thanks. Like that would have been great to figure out on my own. So anyway, it took me a while, but I actually did eventually sit down and play through the whole game. And I think seeing it rather than just hearing about it was definitely a different experience because, obviously I had the full context of the whole game. I got to see like the cross-dressing part, which I thought was like extremely well done and like well handled this time around. And just like, I don't know, very enjoyable. Like it was really fun. And other moments like the Genova boss fight was really cool, and how like they tug at your heartstrings with the music, and just experiencing all the remix tracks was fantastic, and the hollow moment was great. So I definitely am at a point now where I did really, really enjoy FF7 Remake Part 1. But I am also not the biggest fan of a lot of the story moments. Like I feel like the Sephiroth fight was kind of like they blew their load a little too early. Like I probably would have liked that to happen when it's supposed to happen, like in the original game, not like right at the end of Midgar, which is really bizarre. But like, it was one of those things where like it kind of felt like maybe if the game was a flop, like it was like a complete experience. Like you got to fight the final boss, of FF7,
right.
At least. But anyway, I'm not too hot on a lot of the story things. Like the plot ghosts are very weird to me. I think I saw you say that like people saying the plot ghosts are like a representation of the fans is like the worst reading of the plot ghosts.
Worst take.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that because like I would never want to feel that way as a fan, like because I do like new ideas. I want to see I want to see new things. Like one of my favorite things is the reveal of Resident Evil 2 Remake, where it's like, oh, this is like a brand new game, but it's Resident Evil 2. Like exactly. And that's basically what we got with FF7 Remake. Like it is a brand new game, but it's FF7, like it's still following that like core structure. Hopefully.
Until it wasn't.
Hopefully. We'll see in part 2, but hopefully. Yeah, so like, but yeah, like I just I would never want to like have like a salty reading of like the developers that I like shitting on me as a fan, like oh you just want everything to be the same. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not the biggest not the biggest fan of that take on them, but I'm also not the biggest fan of the plot ghosts at all. I did love the Yuffie DLC. They somehow made me care about deep ground stuff, which was like the weirdest thing ever, because I've like literally never cared about deep ground. It's not like a hatred that I have for like that like plot line. I'm just super indifferent on those characters like Nero and Vice, so but like here I was kind of like, oh cool, this is actually kind of cool. I like this. I think that Sonon is gonna come back, even though like
I do too.
I think he's gonna come back as like a dark avatar for like the deep ground stuff and kind of like torture Yuffie in a way. Like I feel like he's gonna be Yuffie's villain throughout this new storyline. And I really enjoyed Yuffie's combat. I'm trying to like say all the things that I liked about the game before I say, my biggest problem is that I'm really not a fan of how it just ends after Midgar. Like I like the concept of it being like a very fleshed out Midgar game where you get to see a lot of the city and you get to slowly walk through it and really take in the atmosphere. But I was so burned by like not having the ability to go out into the open worlds like right after, right after it ended. It was a very bittersweet feeling for me. And having that with like the idea of maybe Zack is alive is like really, it was really souring in a way.
Yeah, that's more or less confirmed at this point. I know a lot of people don't like it, but it was souring in a way that didn't like completely destroy my enjoyment for the game up until that point. But it's got me thinking like, what are they even gonna do? Like, is he in like another timeline? Is he in our timeline? Is the timeline completely changed? Are both timelines like fused together? Like, there's just so much that could be happening with that ending, where I feel like if you have a theory, it might happen. It might actually happen. We don't even know. And honestly, I don't even think that Square knows like what's going on. I feel like maybe they have like some roads that they've like plotted out. But they're just kind of like settling on one. Like, right now. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's like kind of my my feels on FF7 Remake. Oh yeah, and the other part of the question was like, do I think it's a remake or a sequel? I think it's both. I think it's both, honestly. Like, I feel like it's gonna... Like, my personal theory is I think the next part, and, like, however many parts it's gonna be, I feel like it will follow, like, beat for beat, FF7, the original. Like, we'll still go down that, like, path. I just think it's gonna be, like, weirdo shit is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like maybe Aerith lives or something, but like we still go down that path. Or maybe Tifa dies or somebody else dies or something like that. But then again, they even blew their load on that by fake killing Barrett.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
Like it's just a weirdo game. But I like, eventually I came around on it.
That's a lot how I feel too. Like, when I first played it, I took it personally. A lot of the story changes. Because I was just like, again, and I have to say this over and over and over again. I'm very open to story changes, and I don't know how anyone could accuse me of not being when I made videos like why Final Fantasy VII Remake can't be the same game as the original, and like why it was multi-part. I made like all these like stand videos, and like people like were still like, you just wanted a remaster. I'm like, have you not been listening to me for like the past 2 or 3? I've come around, and I really do have like an enjoyment of it, but like my enjoyment of it is more like a Marvel Cinematic Universe enjoyment than like this is like my big brain meaty story, like my magnum opus. This is like the,
you know what?
Yeah.
Like I know like people hearing you say that might take like extreme offense to it.
Right.
But like Marvel movies are hella enjoyable.
Yeah,
like,
they're
they
very
are
enjoyable.
Really fun.
Right.
So like if you hear NSP say that and you get like really, really mad that it's like he's not looking at it as like a deep cerebral dive into like what it means to die and like what it means to have loss in your life, like definitely don't do that, because like he's liking it, he likes it,
Yeah. Like
don't take it that seriously.
Like what's a good like big brain film? Like a cult classic. Just name anyone, right? I don't know why none is like really coming to my mind. Yeah, we'll arbitrarily take Inception, Citizen Kane, right? So instead,
yeah, I was gonna say Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
I was like, what, Rosebud? What is that?
Someone said Morbius. That's funny.
Bro, Morbius, like, best movie ever made. I saw it 10 times.
I'm looking at it more like Loki now than like your Inception or like yours. And Loki's really good, bro. That's a really good movie. That's a really good show. Like it's phenomenal.
I'm sorry, The Room is the most galaxy brain I've ever watched.
Yeah, and it's really good. It's really well constructed, and I respect it for what it is. But I struggle to see that direction as like the galaxy brain direction that I think a lot of people want it to be, especially when it comes to kind of delivering on fan service stuff, like potentially reviving a dead character who just really just shouldn't be revived, especially not in the way in which they kind of did it, because it's basically like, I don't know, like a glitch in like the time matrix, because you killed like the time guardians that fate's like disordered, and just so happens that a fan favorite managed to sneak through the time guardians, and now right, and if that's
and maybe the members of Avalanche that
right.
You know, if they just died, it probably would have been more hard hitting, because they like, that's like one of the best things in my opinion, is that they built them up in this game. And they died, and I was like, wow, that's really sad. But no, they're alive, I guess. Like, they're just gonna be alive.
Right. And that's kind of hard for me to get my head around and think like, that's gonna be like a really deep story, because I feel like it's very hard to tell a really compelling story about loss, which is what FF7 was, when you have in any capacity a character coming back. I just think that that's really incompatible to do. We don't know for certain that he's back, but it's been almost explicitly spelled out in the Ultimanias and subsequent interviews. So I'll tell you my theory about what's going on with Final Fantasy VII Remake and the Arbiters. I think what we have going on here is actually like a time loop. And I think that like whenever you kill the Arbiters, right, you change destiny. So a lot of people are saying that it's multiverse. But if it's multiverse, how does multiverse tie into the idea of changing destiny, right? So I think that because they changed destiny, they changed their world, right? And I think the stamp bag, actually, that they carefully show you, like they very carefully show you.
They do, yeah.
And they show you,
they build Stamp up throughout the game a lot. They're like, look, that's Stamp,
right.
And then you go, oh yeah, that's Stamp. I know Stamp.
Right. So the reason, right, the reason they want to highlight that Stamp is different is because they want to highlight the impact that you made at the end of the game by killing the Arbiters, right? So because you have changed fate, right? You have changed. It's like a butterfly effect, right? And now everything is ever so slightly different. So now Stamp is a different breed of dog. And in terms of narrative, that's so easy to lead, right? Because all you have to do is opening scene. They walk in the calm, or not even calm, but just somewhere around, and they see a picture of Stamp. And all you gotta do is have someone like Barrett be like, "Why the hell is Stamp depicted as a terrier? He's a goddamn beagle."
I don't know why that's so funny to me, just hearing him say depicted as a terrier. Like,
yeah, that probably not what Barrett would say or how he would say it, but
yeah.
In my worst Barrett imitation, right? But he would be like, he's a goddamn beagle. He's not a terrier, right?
I'm not trashing your impressions.
Yeah. Baby Seal says my Barrett is incredible, so I believe Baby Seal. So I think that instantly creates a mystery, right? Because what happens after you're like, okay, well, Stamp's a terrier, so the party reacts to that. They go into town, they ask people, maybe you ask like an old lady, and the old lady is like, I'm 70 years old, and Stamp has always been a terrier.
He's always been a terrier. Get out of my village, Sonny.
And like,
Yeah.
and like, that's it. Like, so then everyone turns to Aerith, and they're like, Aerith, what the we do? What the we do?
Yeah.
So every
I will say, like, I think it's pretty clear by, like, if you just play the game, like, Aerith knows what's going on, like, with everything, because
Right.
like there's literally a scene where Red 13 is like a feral animal,
Yeah.
and then she touches his head, and it's like he is absorbing all of the knowledge of what is to come.
Yeah.
And then you fight Genova, Dreamweaver, and like everyone's like, oh my god, Barrett's dead, and then he's like, calm down, it's just an illusion. Because now he knows everything that's gonna happen, you know?
Right.
I really think that is also something, like,
No, it's really interesting,
like,
right?
to your point, like, I feel like maybe Aerith knows about the time loop or something. You know?
Here is the thing that I've been kind of preaching, because my thing is, why are we even asking Cloud about like the calm stuff? Like, why aren't we even talking to Cloud and being like, Cloud, tell us about Sephiroth? Aerith is clearly the one who knows everything. So why are we even having like the calm flashback from Cloud's perspective when I want to know what Aerith was just basically like, hey, we gotta kill these ghosts. They're bad. Sephiroth wants to change destiny. We have to. I'm just like, but like, I guess the lead up to that, I would have felt stronger if the lead up to that moment had been given some type of exposition for me to wrap my head around what it was leading up to in that moment, versus us just getting that moment with Aerith and her just kind of having that really weird speech. I played the game in both English and Japanese now. It's weird in both. So I really don't know.
Which do you prefer, by the way?
I really enjoy both. There are certain moments and things though that I like more in the other. There's one particular scene in the Japanese that I liked more, has nothing to do with the voice actors, entirely to do with the scripting, and that was pizza line with Jesse.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was really weird, because in English, Cloud's just like, you owe me a pizza. And in Japanese, they're kind of just like telling Jessie all the things that she has to live for, and he's just basically, what he says translated into English is like, your pizza too. He delivers it very softly and tenderly, right? And for some reason in like the localization, they decided that this was gonna be like, to make this like, hey, don't forget about the pizza. And and
it's very bad out of context.
Yeah.
Like if you just looked up any scene and that was the first scene you saw, like this woman dying in this guy's arms, and he's like, you owe me a pizza. Come on, dude. You can't die. I want pizza.
Yeah. And so that line is so much more better delivered or not delivered. I should say written. I mean, it was what it was in English. It's not, like Cody's fault or anything, because he didn't decide though, hey, we're gonna. But yeah, whoever decided that scene was gonna go that way, I'm sure they worked on several other scenes throughout the whole game, and they did a fine job. But that one scene is something that in the English localization that I just really didn't agree with. But for the most part, I really, really do like both of them quite a lot.
Yeah, same. Anyway, sorry.
What is? So I'm gonna ask. No. I'm gonna ask this. Okay. Chat. I want you to go ahead and get your questions ready for both of us, because this is audience question time. This is my favorite stuff. Please highlight, if you could, your questions. It just makes it easier for us to find. You can also tag me. That also makes it easier. And yeah, if you have a specific question for either of us, you can also let us know who that's for. And yeah,
I do want to say I thought it was really funny in the chat. Baby Seal said before that Zach is the most alivest man in all of the It's like, yeah, that's what it feels like.
yeah, no, he's 100% alive, because I mean the intergrade ending too felt like they really doubled down on that, and him.
Oh, we gotta talk about that. Like, what do you think is going on there? Do you think that's all just like red herring stuff, or do you think there's anything tangible there? Because it's like, because I see like the popular theory is that like people do think it's like a different timeline, and they think it's like a timeline where Zach survived and Aerith died, and like the wilting flowers and everyone's crying and all this kind of stuff, which does sound like pretty compelling, but also like it could mean nothing at the same time.
So I think they're wrong. I think everybody is wrong, and I'm going to give them the based and correct answer right now. So let me tell you guys. Let me tell you guys what's really going on. I think the problem with the theories that people are proposing on that end is that it doesn't tell any kind of story, and there's no kind of story you can tell with it that I at least can think of, right? Like what can you do with that idea that people are proposing? Like this idea that Zach's in a different timeline and then Cloud is in his. And what does that do with the story in general, right? Like both from the original game ending and from Intergrade's ending. It doesn't tell any sort of story that comes to any kind of climax. It's an idea. It's like a fan concept, right? And then the idea that the Terrier timeline, assuming that it is one, is like the fan service dimension. That also kind of like, man, that's so unsatisfying. I don't feel like I can like really like be like, yeah, I walked away from that and I feel very complete. And that also goes back to kind of like me looking at it like MCU, right? Like if I have like the fan service dimension, and then I have like the, oh, this is what really happened dimension. This is the fan service. Like you see how that you loosely see how that can take me into Marvel-esque feelings, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel on that. But in terms of like it being the timeline where Aerith died and like Zach's alive, like a role reversal type thing, I don't think that climaxes in any way as a story. So that's why I don't think it's the case. What I think is the case is the shit I'm saying, where it's actually a consequence of fate being, destiny basically being altered, right? So the plot ghosts also show up in like the First Soldier, like the battle mobile royale game. So they've been around for like 30 years at least, right? So you have to think, if they disappear from all points in time, which is what that ending hinted to, because they were there when Zach died, they were there 30 years ago before the story started. If that's the case, then they have been there for like they basically have been constructing all of history carefully for a really long time. And if something like that was to disappear from all points in time, that means a lot of things would actually be very different whenever you would go to look. Like even the smallest details would actually be quite different, right? Because they would just, and Stamp, like again, Stamp is like the perfect butterfly effect symbol of what that is, right? And that's why I think that Zach was revised. So I think that whatever is actually going on at the church with the flowers wilting and the people crying is actually some we just don't know about. And people are trying to predict it based on information, of story information that we just don't have yet. And I think that's what's really going on. And this stuff about it being like a timeline where Aerith died and all this stuff, again, no one can actually lead that into like, how does that service Final Fantasy VII, like the story?
Yeah, it's just kind of like a cool idea.
Yeah, it's just a cool idea, but it's not a story, right? And then that's what like a lot of that's why I like Baby Seal, for example, in chat. He's one of the better people, I'd say, in like the FF7, or not even one of the better. He's one of the best him and Sleep Easy are the best people in like the Final Fantasy VII community, because what they do is they ask a question that I don't think too many other people do ask, like when I do read like a lot of fan theories, which is they ask, how does this actually become a story? Like, how does this actually service a narrative? So that's why big shout out to them in chat. But
to be fair,
yeah,
Square Enix has certainly done that in the past, where this is a cool idea. Oh, wait a minute. What do we do with the story, though? I don't know. Keep coming up with cool ideas for the next game, and the next game, and the next game.
yeah.
So, you know.
All right, so I'll ask you this last one, and then we'll go into chat questions.
I'm excited.
What is your absolute most Final Fantasy VII Remake theory?
Aerith is gonna get owned by Sephiroth, and then Tifa's gonna run in the room. Oh my god, what's happening? And then another Sephiroth is gonna come in and own her, and everyone's gonna die, and Cloud is gonna beat everyone up in the room and go Super Saiyan God and throw Holy at the planet instead of Meteor. He's gonna summon Holy and destroy. I'm just kidding, by the way. I don't.
Based.
That's the thing. Like, I don't really know like what is gonna happen. It's like you said like 2 seconds ago. Like, there's so much story that we don't even have. Like there's so many moments in this game that we don't even have context to for me to build like a psychotic like theory off of that could be real.
Right.
That could fit into like what we experienced in 7 Remake Part 1. But I mean, I guess like it's like I said before, like I don't know if I have like a batshit crazy theory, but I feel like we're gonna follow those like the typical beats from the original. But like you said, butterfly effect, things are going to be ever so slightly changed. Like maybe Jessie is gonna be alive and she's gonna be like, you know what? I'm done with Avalanche. I'm going back to being a stage actress. And we're gonna see her at the Golden Saucer. Or, you know, Chadley is gonna somehow annoy the fuck out of me and be everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
And give me materia and you know, grow old with Yuffie because she loves materia. That's a theory that I've heard, by the way, that they're gonna get together because they're both young and both like materia. And it's like, please stop immediately at all costs.
That's cursed.
I do think I have thought about it before, but I think, and this is like my deepest, darkest fears, is that Genesis will come back in some way.
Right. Well, I mean, they have the rights to Gact again because he's Genesis's outfit. I think is like in the First Soldier. So they have the rights to Gact, and people have been discussing that. So
I am holding back saying very ridiculous things about Gact that you know about.
Yeah. Is it the thing that I told you about? Isn't that so crazy?
It's the thing that you told me about that I literally went down a rabbit hole for a full day, just being like, oh my god, I can't believe the sheer amount of material there is of him saying this thing.
Yes.
How is this possible? What the fuck?
If you guys want like a really good video with Gact in it, he's got like a really crazy interview out there. Go to the Anime Man. Go to Joey's channel, and Joey has an interview with Gact.
Phenomenal.
And
please watch it.
Please watch it, because you actually, if Genesis was anything like Gact, like actual Gact, he would be the greatest Final Fantasy character of all time, undisputed. Like, it would just, like Gact in real life is like, I don't know, like if a Metal Gear Rising villain like had nothing to actually be evil about, but he was still like a Metal Gear Rising villain. Like, that's Gact.
That is the description of Gact that I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah,
but
like,
I back on topic. I think that he definitely will probably come back in some kind of way, and like Deep Ground is gonna get like, I guess, more integrated into the original FF7 story, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like we'll play through the beats of the game have that like butterfly effect stuff happen, but also have like deep ground, stuff at the same time. Surge of Cerberus stuff.
Yeah. I guess because mine's like real simple. Mine is basically they're going to they're just going to go full sequel, which is what I don't think anyone's actually anticipating. But I think at some point, because the consensus right now is that it's a remake and a sequel. I don't think it's possible to tell a satisfying story while being both, because at some point the sequel threads are just going to be more interesting than the remake threads, and the remake threads will feel more like filler.
Yeah.
Compared to,
so you think it's just not even gonna follow the beats of the original?
I think
they're just gonna go off on a different.
Yeah, it'd be better if they didn't, right? Because the moment I get into game 2, what am I thinking about, right? What the went on?
Yeah.
That's like my first thought. Like the moment I get in there is like, what is going on? I want to know the mystery, right? And so it kind of dampens the remake part of it, right? Because I'm like, instead of me going like, oh man, I can't wait to see what they do with such and such. Now all my brain is really thinking about is what are the arbiters? You know, what are the arbiters? What is the consequence of the and think about the discussions, right, that we have about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Almost all of them are about what is the consequences of the arbiters? What does the Zack scene mean? Nobody's talking about, I can't wait to see Cosmo Canyon, because that's kind of like, I mean, we know it'll look beautiful and nice, but that's kind of the boring, predictable part. Not like in the sense of where it's like, oh, I wouldn't prefer like, you know, to have a remake in that style, but it's just like when you have the two threads going and you have like this big mystery about like all this other potentially crazy stuff going on, then I'd rather just follow the mystery of what the potentially crazy stuff is rather than entertain
here's
the
my
remake
question
stuff.
to you. The first game on the box, it's called Final Fantasy VII Remake. Do you think that part 2 will have a different subtitle if that is the case? Like, because people also say like remake on the box like has a different meaning than just like, oh, we're remaking FF7, because clearly the game is not a full remake of FF7. It's more like thematic, like the timeline of FF7 is remade, you know? It's not like the game is remade, you know what I mean? So like, do you think it'll be like Final Fantasy VII, like the unknown journey or whatever, or something like that? Like, do you think it will just have like a different subtitle, or do you think it will be called Remake Part 2?
So thinking,
if it is a sequel,
thinking as a YouTuber and thinking about clickbait, right? Because that's kind of that's what a good title is in a way. It's like clickbait, right? Somewhere those two strands of DNA cross. I think that Final Fantasy VII Remake 2 sounds heavier hitting than any, because I know some people like Final Fantasy VII Reunion, right? Final Fantasy VII Remake 2 is just like, you know what it is, right? Also, how do you abbreviate? This is marketing brain. How do you abbreviate in such a way that separates Reunion from Remake, right? So you'd have to type in Final Fantasy VII RU. As a Final Fantasy XIV fan, I already kind of hate that we have to do this with like Stormblood and Shadowbringers, because they're both SB. So sometimes you'll see Stormblood and you'll see because Stormblood's SB because it came first, right? So then the next expansion is Shadowbringers, right? So then everyone's like, well, what the hell do we call this? And then it had to be SHB because
I was gonna ask, did people say S blow?
Oh,
and the only reason why I say that is because some people abbreviate Bloodborne as Blobo, and I hate it.
Why wouldn't you just call it BB?
Well, because it's technically not 2 words; it's 1 word. Bloodborne is 1 word.
Yeah, I don't give a I'm not calling it no blue blood.
Blobo.
Yeah,
Like, no,
blow
please don't
blow.
say that.
I ain't
Anyway, sorry.
blowing no bows.
But then you could have clickbait videos. FF7RU ... Kidding me. Are you serious?
True. True. That is true. But I also think that like Final Fantasy VII Remake 2, I think it has like it kind of indicates the play order to casual people, because once all these parts are out, people will be like, do I start with Reunion, Remake, whatever the other one is, Rebuild? It's like what do I do, right? And they all vaguely sound familiar. So I think if they went the Reunion, Rebuild, or whatever that people are suggesting, I think if they go that route, what'll happen is that it'll be a Wii U situation. Marketing wise. Yeah, I feel like it's all too close together. I feel like the best title that they could possibly name it, unless they prove me wrong with something else, is Final Fantasy VII Remake 2.
Yeah. So that's like the literal like rational brained version of that. But this is also the same company that made Kingdom Hearts, where like you can't just play 1, 2, and 3. You have to play like a million other games in between 1, 2, and 3, and they're definitely not called 1, 2, or 3. Like,
right. I'm thinking about foolish mortal things like accessibility and good marketing that they don't care about. So.
What is Kingdom Hearts Triple D? Like, what does that mean? Like, from like a casual person's perspective.
Yeah, but it's also 3D because it's on 3DS.
Dude. Oh my god! Can you believe that doesn't even apply anymore? Like, if you play it on the console, like the 3D like naming convention.
And that game got ported so fast too that it's just like now someone will come and like play it on like the collection, and they'll be like 3D. Yeah, and it was so weird too at the time because some people thought it was actually Kingdom Hearts 3 for a little while after it was announced because it was 3D. No, but it's actually leading into Kingdom Hearts 3.
It kind of did. Almost. Almost.
Yeah. Oh, the ending where Sora and Riku are like standing in the light, and then the way they're standing in the light makes like a 3. Do you remember everyone freaking out over that?
I forgot about that. Yeah. There's so many moments in Kingdom Hearts that are just like too galaxy brain for me. For my
at human brain. Yeah, at that point I was just like, we just make the damn third game.
Yeah,
that was my reaction. Don't tease me.
Even after that, like we had to have like 0.2 or whatever. Like Aqua. Like okay.
Okay.
Anyway,
let's go through our follower questions. Thoughts on Tweewee and Neo Tweewee Rider being on Cage 4 and the Heavensward Rider being on Missing Link. Personally has me very excited to see how the stories of the future games will be presented. I think the Heavensward Rider was just like it's not like the Heavensward Rider, My Hero. They are actually they're rumored to be working on 16 as like the lead writer, so it's like one of the sub writers for Heavensward. So I don't know how big of an impact that's gonna have, because I tried to look it up. I couldn't find exactly what it was in Heavensward that they worked on, so I'm under the assumption that it's probably like some minor quest lines and stuff, but I don't think it'll hurt. As for the Tweewee writer being on Cage 4, that's cool. I enjoyed Tweewee's stories more than a lot of Kingdom Hearts games, so
yeah, I haven't finished the first World Ends With You yet, but I got a decent amount of the way through it, and I was really enjoying it. So yeah, that sounds like a great idea, like to have that. And I think someone Dreambaum said like the Tweewee team is basically the Kingdom Hearts team at this point. So yeah, like that, I think that's fantastic. Like they make some good stuff.
Yeah, it really is cool. Schrodinger's baby seal, my boy, great guy. Yes. First of all, he's like, number 1, why are you both so beautiful? Please turn it down for us mortals. Thank you. Then he also asks, what does Square Enix need to do in the upcoming gaming generation to restore fan faith and develop its image? I'll let you take this one first.
I know what to do. I know what they have to do. They need to let Yoshi P make more games, right?
Based.
Let him branch out more, because clearly his game is the game that's been taking off the best out of everything so far. Like even I think this is probably safe to say, right? Like even more than FF7 Remake. Like it's more successful than 7R.
It is the most profitable FF of all time. So
there you go.
Yeah, I don't know what that means in terms of numbers, like directly, but it is probably their fastest, biggest like growing game. I got a more complicated answer, shockingly.
Oh, can I add one more thing?
Please.
Port Parasite Eve 1 to new consoles, please. I know you guys have the rights. You can't, chat room, you can't tell me that they don't have the rights anymore, because they got the rights back a couple years ago for the PlayStation Classic, because Parasite Eve is on the PlayStation Classic in Japan. Put that on Steam, put it on the PlayStation Store. More people need to experience Parasite Eve 1. It's aged wonderfully.
It's a beautiful game. I love it.
Anyway.
That's like... because that's like the closest you can get to like survival horror RPG, right?
I know. I want it.
My answer to that question is you have a really good service game, Square. It's called Final Fantasy XIV. And you don't need to make any of these other service games. The nice thing about Final Fantasy XIV, if I buy Endwalker or whatever 7.0 is going to be, when I buy that game, it's a $40 expansion, I actually get the whole game. I don't have to buy the game and then spend money, trying to pull or grab the content that I want from loot boxes, right? They need to understand that game increases in value, and it doesn't require you to, have an opportunity to win that content every time. And that's where Avengers and other stuff. And that's not to say gachas are bad. I want to clarify. I'm not saying gachas are bad. I just don't think that in a full-priced video game that costs $70 that we should be doing gacha stuff.
Yeah. Not a fan of it. We're literally Halo fans are kind of going through that right now with Halo Infinite's multiplayer mode, because it is free to play, but I mean, arguably, like most of the players that are playing it bought the game, like the full version of the game that comes with the campaign and the multiplayer. And that game is just like, right now it's super piecemeal. Everything is coming out at a snail's pace. And we've seen this so many times before with other like games as a service, where it's like, if you buy the game, you should get so much. You should get $60 worth of content, especially if it is an online game like that. But that's the thing, like, I feel like games like Fortnite, games like Apex Legends and stuff like that, it's so appealing to have a thing that is like free or like a little bit of money, like a low cost game that is super unfinished for developers, because they could push it out of the door quicker and then they can add to it as time passes. And I just don't think that is good for everyone, for every IP, for every type of game genre, and every like developer or publisher. I think that, like what you said, like you spend $60, you get a full game out of it. Like the content patches and slow like hot physics fixes, or like those can come over time, not like full parts of games like that. Like the game has to be good when you buy it, right? If it's not, will drag your ass to hell.
Right. And I really want them to have that message clear. And then on top of restoring their image in terms of stop messing around with these trashy service games. And I'm sorry, I don't like to normally just call a game trash, but I think that when you're getting 40 metascores and you have 8 concurrent players on Steam, and your game is being universally panned by multiple people, and it's not even just one game that you have like this within like a couple of years span. It's like the fourth or fifth game that you have like this. Yeah.
And that's not the consistency you want. You don't want to consistently release bad games. Like, come on.
The other aspect,
I'm sure this makes sense to you, but like, and I'm sorry I cut you off, but I feel like Yoshi P with FF16, it really feels like a Capcom game to me, like in terms of its like reveal and release, where it's like we're getting updates of the game is about to be done. We're approaching the end of development, and then like we're gonna get the game, not like here's like some trailers throughout 10 years and then you get the game. Like It feels like they're following like Capcom's recent output, where it's like make the game, reveal the game, don't reveal the game, then make the game,
right. And
I feel like with 16 they're doing that, and it feels good for once. Like it really feels good. Like it feels like there's a game there,
I kind of fear that they might do that might be doing that with Kingdom Hearts 4 as well, because they're like, it's running in Unreal Engine 4, it's going to be transferred. The transition between 4 and 5 is pretty easy as long as you're running on like 4.25 or later. But it's really the fact that they said that the game is currently in early development. So it's not in mid to late development. They explicitly said early development, right? And I know that it's probably not going to take nearly as long as Kingdom Hearts 3, because it had a lot of other issues going on. But early development signifies to me that we're looking at like bare minimum of like it's like 3 years out.
Yeah,
right? Because there's no way they're going to go from early development to like launch from like now to like Q2 2024. That just won't happen, right?
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Right. So the game's at least 3 years out. 2025.
Like you said, it's on Unreal Engine, and they have like way more experience with that now with like FF7 Remake, and it's like easier to use. So
right. But
it's not like some weirdo like proprietary crystal tools or whatever. Or
yeah, so I don't think it's not going to take nearly as long as Kingdom Hearts 3, but it is still going to have a development cycle that will probably be fitting of a JRPG. Let's just say that. And that will probably be, that to me says 2025, which I think is a very reasonable time. Like I wouldn't be upset, by the way, with 2025. I know some people read 2025 and they think that's like a bad thing, but I think 3 years it would not be a terrible thing. But I think that
I don't think it's bad, especially if we're gonna get like 16 earlier than that,
Yeah, 16.
We'll have something to hold us over.
7 Remake 2. So yeah, we'll probably get both of those in between. It's not a big deal. Is Nomura working on Kingdom Hearts 4 gonna have an effect on 7R2's development? He's involved with both projects, right? So what's going on there is that he is not the actor director for 7R2. A guy named Naoki Hamaguchi is the active director for 7R2. He co-directed part 1. Sorry, my light flickered. Let me. There we go.
It's the darkness.
Yeah. Yeah. Nomura found out I was talking about him. I saw. Subtext says, I saw a clip of Yoshi P, not sure when it was from, looked like a live letter, seeming to admit that the original FF16 trailer was a bit rougher than he wanted to because he wanted to use in-game graphics rather than cinematics. Yeah, it didn't look super next-gen. Do you think the final game's graphics have taken a big leap, or will be more or less similar to what we saw in 2020?
I think that's very true, because it's very possible that trailer could also have been like PS4 version or whatever, or like developed on like hardware that wasn't PS5, because the game has been in development for a while, and I'm sure it will probably look similar but better, and in like minute technical ways, like maybe like the lighting will be a lot better, or like the shadows will be a lot better, and the particle effects and all that. But I mean, I think the game looks pretty good, like the way it looked.
Yeah.
So I think he's got nothing to worry about, Yoshi P.
I think if the game looks the way it currently does, but runs at 60 frames per second, then I'll like it.
That's the biggest. Just high frame rate.
Because I don't,
especially for that game.
Because I don't think it's ugly at all. Like, could it look better? Sure, a lot of games could, look better, quote unquote. But I think it looks decent. And if it can run at a solid 60 with like minimum hiccups, then I think the way it currently looks, which it does kind of look like a PS4 game, plus or minus. But I think if it runs at a solid 60 and looks like that, then I'm cool. I really don't have too big of an issue.
I think too many people get wrapped up in the current trend of like things have to look super photorealistic or like very high res or high poly, where when I saw that trailer, I was just like really excited because it had like an art style that looked appealing to me, where I was like, it looks like Final Fantasy, but it's dark. It's like it's clearly like a dark take on like what FF14 looks like.
Yeah, it looks like,
I think it's cool.
Yeah, like the graphical style is 100% FF14 for sure. Yeah. Same character designer too.
What we need.
Yeah. If oh man, I can't wait for you to see some of like 14's like later character designs, because
I'm gonna do it, dude. I'm powering through.
You're gonna love it so much. When you see like some of Kazuya Takahashi's like. When you see like some of his later character designs, his character designs.
Can I tell you the real reason why I'm like really trying to get into it?
What's up?
I think, and I know nothing about her. I don't know anything about this character. I think Ishtola looks so cool, but I don't have enough gamer street cred to like, cosplay her or buy an expensive Play Arts Kai figure of her. So I need to learn who that character is. I'm gonna play that fucking game, and I'm gonna find out all about that character.
She's really cool. She's really cool. There's a reason. And by the way, I don't know if I told you. I think I did tell you this. Don't get attached to attach to any of the voice actors.
Okay.
Because after
I do know about that.
Because after A Realm Reborn, and Yoshi P somehow pulled off a miracle of remaking an MMO in 2.5 years, they basically switched voice acting studios. Because right in like A Realm Reborn, it's Americans doing British voices, and Heavensward Onward, they actually have real British voice acting. And most of the story is voice acted, thank God. And that's
they're doing that for 16, right? It's like mostly British actors.
Yes, and not only are they doing that, it's also like they actually record the English acting first, which is also what's crazy.
Yeah.
So the way they dub their games is completely different than the way the rest of like the Japanese industry does. Like they actually have the localizers working in-house in the studio with them as they write the story. So it is not, we're taking the Japanese script and then we're translating it. Koji Fox is like, he is actually like sitting there like working with Natsuko Ishikawa, and like they are actually like bouncing off of each other. He's helping her come up with terms because it's like medieval type fantasy, so they're using like a lot of English terms. So he's actually talking to her, help her come up with like English terms that make sense and stuff like that.
That is so amazing. Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And
so do you know if that they're doing that for 16, or would you imagine that they're probably doing that?
They are. And actually, Koji Fox, who is 14's lead localizer, he's currently not on 14 because he's busy with 16. They announced that like a couple live letters ago, where they were like, "Yeah,
oh my god,
yeah, he's too busy."
It's so cool.
Yeah.
We're probably not going to get weirdo dialogue.
Yeah, no.
Right?
That's why 14 is like one of the first Japanese. There's very few Japanese games that I know are like this, but 14 is like one of the few Japanese games where people will actually ratio you for not playing it in English because that's how good the English version is.
I love that.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
it is actually that good. Like I know like a very tiny number of people, and not that like the Japanese script is like bad or anything, but the English version of it is just so good that it's just like it almost feels like as an English speaker you're missing out in a way to not play it in English, because if I didn't know it was a Japanese game, then yeah, it just wouldn't.
Do you want to know like a fun piece of trivia that's kind of similar but not really? Hold on, I gotta clear my throat. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. Resident Evil is the same way. They do but not good though. They do the English first, but they usually just get like the script writer writes it in Japanese, and then they get someone to translate the script. So that's how, like, you would play like RE1 through 3, the originals, and be like, oh, this sounds like a weird, like, they did this second. They actually did it first. And in those games, they only did English. So if you play Biohazard, the Japanese versions, there's no Japanese voice track for the original game. And they only started adding Japanese in like the early 2010s to their games.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's kind of a weird way to do things.
Yeah, so that's why it's like really weird. Like you're like, it's all English, but it's not English. Like it sounds like English almost. You know?
Oh
Where,
no.
Like you were almost a Jill sandwich. It's like, oh, what are you doing?
Oh no. Yeah. So that's how they've avoided that. And honestly, I'll try to send you some of like the lines or like some like non-spoilery scenes later. But like there are scenes where characters are talking and like it just sounds like poetry. Have you ever seen like Bridgerton? I know this sounds weird.
Yeah.
But the guy who plays Anthony, he's Graha Tia, the cat boy, the red-haired cat boy. I'm sure you've seen him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And he's like
That's
this.
awesome.
He's like the same character in 14, where he's a big lover boy. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I want to play it right now.
You got a little bit more grunt work to do first. All right, let's get some more.
I'll say that.
It gets better. A Realm Reborn is not all bad. There's some really high moments in Realm Reborn. Jay Butthound, great username, as to both. What have we seen in part 1? Given what we've seen in part 1, what do you hope they do with 7R from here on out?
I think we kind of went over that.
Yeah, I think we vaguely did.
I guess if I can speak to that a little bit more, like I hope that they refine some of the combat stuff. Like I hope that they do more of what they did with Yuffie with the rest of the characters. Like having the synergy button, I think is really, really cool. Like having the team attacks was so much fun because you can really, like in the intermission like DLC, like if you stagger an enemy and then quickly like synergize and do like an Art of War attack with Yuffie and Sonon, you could just like melt bosses. Like I remember when people were saying, oh, like Nero is like so hard, like he's so difficult. And like the first time I played him, like I fought against him, like I just annihilated him. Like I was like, what do you mean he's so hard? Like
yeah, actually,
I just, like, beat him like a few times and that was it.
So that was me. I haven't gone back through intermission on hard yet, but on normal, I feel like I beat him on accident.
Right?
I was like, oh, is that it? I thought there was gonna be like something else after that because I feel like I accidentally beat him. I was like, wow, that was easy.
Hard mode was really fulfilling though, playing him or fighting against him.
I love Remake's hard mode in general. Actually, that there goes one thing that I would do differently. The thing I do differently is that I'd have 2 hard modes, so there'd be a total of 4 difficulties. And the way the first hard mode would be one that you could play through from the start. And the second heart
with,
mode,
items.
right? Yeah, like with items, right? And then the second heart mode would be more like the heart mode that we see in the first game, but maybe even slightly harder, and you don't have items.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you actually, it was brought up, or no, it was just in this video, the Tim Rogers review, where like, and I think we both agree on this, that like hard mode for FF7R is like way more fun because it's basically like essentially cutting out the fluff of like walk over here, open a chest, pick up an item. Like it gets rid of a lot of like the artificial like padding of the game where
it
you can
just
just
rid of the RPG.
It sure does. It does. It really does. But I like my hack and slash games too. Like
that's what hard mode is, though. It's like it's just straight up a hack and slash, right?
It speaks to the strength of the battle system, though, at the same time, because the battle system is like at its core just very fun and very fleshed out with all the characters and like all the things that you can do. So yeah, I totally agree with you, though. Like having a separate hard mode that you can play from the start with items, with the intended experience, but also having that like hack and slash mode, it would be like perfect for part 2.
Because they even give you the experience to level you up and like max out your materia really fast, because they basically wanted to be like, let's take that out of the equation and let's just give you weird. And let's just give you like this is now a pure action game code. And it's kind of I kind of enjoy it like more in that way, in a weird way, because even though I'm more of like an RPG guy, I just feel like, you know, some of the action mechanics of that battle system really shine when you're just focused on those action mechanics.
Yeah.
So I'll take 3 more big questions.
3 more.
I'll kind of fuse your boy Raid Shadow Legends, great username, and subtext into like one question here. Basically, Final Fantasy IX remake, because you know we got the NVIDIA leak. And the NVIDIA leak don't lie.
Yeah.
NVIDIA leak don't lie.
Really interesting for a few of those other games on there. Shout out to my Resident Evil fans in the chat. Nudge, nudge. But yeah, FF9, you know, I got my original copy right here. I'm a big fan of FF9. I think FF9 was like one of the first Final Fantasies that I played on my own, where I really was able to like fully immerse myself in the game, where it wasn't just like me mostly watching my brother play and going like, wow, cool, pointing at the screen. So I think I don't think that they will do something like as, you know, quote unquote galaxy brain as like FF7 remake, where like, oh, we're remaking the timeline, maybe dimensions and time loops and all that. I feel like if they are remaking it, which they probably are remaking it, it'll be what it is. Like it'll be like a remake of the game, you know? I don't think they're gonna risk going going crazy with FF9, because FF9, when it came out, was supposed to be like a traditional return to like high fantasy, because we had 7 and 8, which were like these like weird blends of like fantasy with modern day aesthetics, and even some like cyberpunk aesthetics for 7, you know, like it's like this big cyberpunk city that you're in. So I feel like they probably won't go too crazy with it. That being said, does that mean is it gonna be turn-based, or is it gonna be like real-time action? Because I could kind of go either way with that.
Yeah, that's a big question. I imagine that it might actually be turn-based. I know that's kind of hard to imagine, but I feel like it could be, because developing it as an action game would make it much more expensive and difficult to do, because level design on an action game is a lot harder to do than it is on a turn-based game, right? It's a lot more expensive, and animation costs is tremendously more expensive on an action game.
If you're doing like combos for every character, like that adds up over time for sure.
Right. And so I only know one thing with Final Fantasy IX Remake. The one thing I know with Final Fantasy IX Remake is that it just absolutely cannot be a multi-game saga. And listen,
I agree.
here's the problem is that we can't have 10 years and nothing but remake back to back. Like, we'd have 2 remake series going at one time, and I wouldn't enjoy that versus getting like Final Fantasy 17 or 18 or 19. I'd rather have that. Like, at least with Resident Evil, they have like a good flow where it's like, okay, here's a remake, here's a new game, here's a remake, here's a new game. That's cool.
And, at its core, Resident Evil it's not a JRPG series. It's like an adventure game where it's like you're just getting like 8 to 12 hour long games out of it, you know?
Right.
So,
and it's a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot easier, right? So while it may not be a fair comparison, Final Fantasy just may not be able to do that. And it looks to me like they're trying to do the Resident Evil thing, if FF9 Remake is true, but I don't think that they're able to do it if both of those have to be multiple game epics in order for them to get that out.
Yeah. It almost has the same like kind of release schedule if you think about it, because it would be like FF7 Remake, FF16, FF9 Remake, maybe 17, you know, like that kind of thing.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That would be okay if we're only talking about one part of it.
Yeah. And honestly, like I know a lot of like elitist FF7 fans are always like holding up that flag of like FF7 Remake should have just been the turn-based game with better graphics and voice acting. For 9, I'm kind of in that camp. Like, just make it the same game with like new cutscenes, voice acting, and better graphics. Like, I don't think 9 needs to be like the action game epic that 7 Remake is or whatever.
Right.
You know,
I think they could only get away with it with 7.
With
like,
7. Yeah.
I don't think any other title in Final Fantasy people will like go for that. I don't think I would go for that. Okay, let's get 2 more really thick boy questions.
How about this? FF9 Remake is actually a game where you play as a guy named Kyle, and you slowly play through the game, and you find out that you're actually playing as Kuja. And he's really edgy the whole game, and he says a lot, and he cuts off the bosses from talking and giving their monologues.
Oh man, that's
Can you imagine?
That's fucking sounds to me like the greatest Final Fantasy protagonist I've ever heard of. Unironically, that sounds like the Metal Gear Rising of Final Fantasy. Let's see if we got 2 more good questions. You guys spam the chat with everything right now, because I think I had some earlier and then I scrolled down and then the thing wouldn't let me scroll back up, so I may have lost your question. So
if you have questions that we haven't answered yet, put them in the chat now.
Yes, please. Let us know. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know your feelings.
Kyle Kuja.
Yeah, imagine Kuja's just drinking like Monster, and he's like punching out of Tomberries.
Oh,
I'm so disappointed that that
he
Jack
has a bus, like he has a bus.
Yeah. I'm so disappointed that Jack didn't choke out a chocobo. Like, I just wanted him to like strangle a chocobo and then just like, bro.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Here's an interesting one. What kind of a Final Fantasy spin-off game would y'all like to see in the future? Do you think there's any approach to them that hasn't been explored in a thorough way yet?
Um, what would I like to see in a
Yeah, is there
spin-off
any
game?
type of spin-off that you'd like to see?
It's really interesting because for years I've always said that I always thought that like Agni's philosophy would be like a really great game in its own right, like either a spin-off or a mainline game. But we're actually kind of getting that with Forspoken.
Mm.
And just from like the limited stuff that I've seen of Forspoken, like it almost does feel like it is like a Final Fantasy spin-off game. Like it's got like the magic kind of stuff. It looks like FF15. But yeah, I would say it's really hard because I would just say like, you know, like a hack and slash game, like a real-time action game, but we're like getting those, you know?
Yeah.
We're like actually getting those now.
Multiple.
How about this? A survival horror game where you're in like a castle
Oh.
and you play as a summoner because summoners aren't like super duper physical combat.
Yeah.
And you have to collect etherite crystals to power your magic attacks, which is a limited resource, but also ties into your healing, which is limited. And we have like dark and scary, like genuinely scary takes on Final Fantasy creatures, like having like zombies that you can heal to kill them, or burn to like remove them from the battle completely, or like you're in a room with like a bomb, like a fire bomb, and there's also like tons of zombies in the room, and you're like crouching around, like trying to sneak around, but you can get their attention. Like you grab a bottle or something and you throw it into a corner, and they all kind of go over to the corner, and then you use like Firaga to power up the bomb, and it kills all the zombies. And you're just sneaking around as this summoner, you know, in this like castle environment.
I like that a lot. Wow. That sounds cool as hell.
Yeah, and the bosses could be like the actual summons that you have to get back under control.
Wow. That's cool. I really like that. Jesus. Shit.
Well,
I guess I'll come up with a mediocre answer to follow to follow up that great response. I have two different answers. I forgot one of them. So I would like to see a Final Fantasy Soulsborne game that's actually like a Soulsborne game, like actually, like more like a From Software type of Soulsborne game, but like for real though, like for real, like actual like more close to like what From Software would do. If
this is the part of the stream where we just lament the multiverse where they got that, and it's all like a mono art style.
Yeah.
And you play as the Warrior of Light with like long white hair, and it's all Shakespearean acting, and you're in this like bright, colorful fantasy world, but it's like Souls-like combat.
That's what like it see like for me that's like what I couldn't get over like with Stranger Paradise, right? Is that I'm looking at like this like, you know, like no offense to anyone who genuinely enjoyed it, but I'm looking at this game that just kind of looks like, you know, kind of like ugly. And I'm sorry, but like yeah, and I couldn't help but think, and the character designs I wasn't a huge fan of, and I couldn't help but think like this feels like such a missed opportunity to do like a Final Fantasy like Soulsborne, but something that's like actually Final Fantasy looking.
Yeah, and I think I brought this up to you like maybe before the game came out, like when we were like kind of in the review period, where how cool would it have been to like play that game that we're describing, but have it like give you the same outcome of like you're playing as this guy who is being like hyped up as the Warrior of Light. He looks like the Warrior of Light, and he is the destined hero with his buddies. Right. But it's like it plays out in the same way, like
right. And they didn't name him Jack Garland.
they didn't name him Jack Garland.
So it genuinely
Like,
came as a surprise, right, at the end.
yeah, and you slowly see this guy like break down over time. Like maybe his friends die, like his party members die one at a time and become those like boss monsters.
Right.
And then the big twist in the end is like, oh, you're actually playing as Garland from the first game.
Right.
You thought you were like Warrior of Light, but you're Garland, you know? And it's
Right.
not like this weird like sci-fi like space station. Like, I don't know, man. That game, I feel like too many people give that game a pass. I don't know. Man.
You're not wrong. And yeah, I feel like too many people gave that game a pass too on a lot of things. And I don't know. Whenever I look at it, I just think that like this concept, this concept had like so much more potential. And I understand that people think, oh man, it's so funny when he says and he interrupts the boss, but it's just like, I don't know. I feel like that potential, that idea has so much potential for it to be done in the way that it is, whether it's funny or campy or whatever way people want to describe it. I just feel like, man, that's like $1 million idea, and they kind of, decided to go that way. I don't know.
Like actually have like a character that consistently like visits and cares about Princess Sarah, and like, you build up a relationship with the character and with your party members that's like meaningful, and not just like, oh, at the very end of the game they were all best friends. Did you know that?
Or honestly, you know what they could have done, like that would have like really worked for me too. Like they could have just had like no party members at all, quite frankly. Scrap like the Four Fiends idea and just like straight up like a Soulsborne, or like you have like a character creator, you're playing as a generic guy, and that you just make in a character creator.
Yeah.
And and then you're just in a Final Fantasy, and you just literally do it like completely like Soulsborne style, where you just like the story even like kind of takes like a backseat to like exploring like lore and that type of thing. For sure. I actually would have been really into that idea too. Like I said, they could have used
that fucking badass Neo character creation that they have, like,
God, that would have been so much better.
That character creation, like, I remember when I first saw it in Neo 2, I was like, these are Final Fantasy characters. And little did I know we were going to get something like that, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted.
God. Basically, if they would have actually took Neo 2, like, I mean, actually, and made like Final Fantasy with it, I think that would have been a lot cooler. All right, let's.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get these because this one's probably gonna be a quick answer for you, maybe, and then I'll let this one round out the show. This is this one's from Schrodinger's Baby Seal. What is happening at the end of Resident Evil Village? Hottest theory.
I think so. For the first part of the ending, I do think that Chris is, he's going off to the BSAA and the European branch of it to like storm it, and like mess things up, because they literally are making bioweapon soldiers, which is not good. Do I think we're gonna see that ever in a game? No. I think that event will be referenced in other games, though. I don't think we're gonna play through it though in like the DLC for Village. The second part of the ending, I personally think, and I know this is crazy because it's super weird and it's just like kind of like fantasy, but I really do think that Rose, there wasn't a time jump. I think that Rose became like a grown woman in like a few years, because if you look at the jars, the Rose jars in Village, there's a paragraph of text on them, and one of the lines says, subject will age rapidly if not administered regular shots. And it says that on every Rose jar. And when you play RE7, that's what happens. Evie becomes a grandma in 3 years. And she is literally like the perfected version of Evelyn. So I feel like we're not gonna, like, if they are going to continue the series with Rose and basically make a Parasite Eve game with her where she has weird mold powers, but also it's a survival horror game, I don't think we're gonna see like super old Chris Redfield or super old Leon. I think we're gonna see those characters be like, why is she like aging so rapidly? We don't understand. And I think it's a pretty good opportunity to tell like a really emotional story of like Rose like aging rapidly, like old Snake from MGS4.
That's what I thought of too. Oh man,
Universe brain, yes.
Yeah.
Universe.
I was gonna say chat really liked that one. Okay, this is the one that'll round it out, and I think I already know your answer to this. I don't even. This is pretty obvious to me, but I'll let you answer it for them.
Okay.
Your dream remake.
You already know what I'm gonna say.
I do already know what you're gonna say. Say it for them.
FF10.
Actually, I did not see that coming.
Wait a minute, is it like dream remake of FF?
It was just dream remake in general.
Yeah, FF10.
Really? What?
Yeah.
I was so goddamn sure you were gonna say Parasite Eve.
Look, I know they've gotten better over the years with like FF7 Remake's female characters, but there's just something about Aya Brea where I think she's cursed. And I think they think she's like a sex symbol.
Yeah.
Because the third birthday was so egregious.
It was bad. It was
and
so
I don't
bad.
know if I want to risk that.
And
that's why I'm playing it safe, and I'm saying
yeah. Honestly, like, and I feel you, because, you know, like, if I'm playing it as a man, and I'm going through there, and I'm like, I'm kind of like,
yeah.
I don't know about that, Chief. That's kind of weird.
That's the thing, right? Like, I feel like third birthday, like, transcended, like, horniness as a concept, where, like, everyone was like, okay, this is, like, just really weird in general. Like, this is an established character who's never exhibited this kind of, like, characterization.
Yeah.
But then when you get to the fucking twist of actually, you are, like, a young girl in the body of a grown woman. That makes it about 1,000,000 times weirder, guys. Like, I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, that was and man.
Kyle Madigan puts another wedding ring on her finger. So she has 2 wedding rings, so he's marrying the little girl version of her too. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah. Third birthday was really, really weird. And quite honestly, I kind of agree with you that unless I'm convinced that they wouldn't go that direction again, I feel like it would be harder to go that direction again, though, compared to, I mean, you know, third birthday came out in like 2005, 6.
Yeah.
So I feel like this shift in time alone would discourage them from going that route again, because it was honestly cringe. Like, it was not
it's
like
cringe.
It was not like, was it 2011? God, that's so
yeah,
weird.
It was.
That's so weird. I was in my head, I'm like 2005. No, that was 2011.
So fucked about this, and this is the only way I will accept a Parasite Eve 1 remake. So the part about it is, like, third birthday and Metroid Other M came out in the same year, where Metroid Other M was, like, arguably a very similar treatment of Samus, where it was like, remove all of her agency. She has to answer to this guy who we've never heard of up to this point. Well, I think he was mentioned earlier in the earlier games. I'm not super familiar with Metroid, but it's like that similar thing where you're like, this is the, like, first female video game character. Like, she is a legend in the industry, and you're making her, you're, like, dumbing her down and reducing her to this like weird crybaby like character who can't use any of her abilities without the permission of this like weird dude who's like kind of like a father figure, kind of like a commander, almost like a love interest. Very bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but for Metroid Dread, the character's name is Adam. They were like, okay, Adam is in Metroid Dread, but he's not giving you any orders, guys. He's here, but he's not. And they made it very clear that Metroid Dread is a game about Samus being awesome.
Right.
If they did that with Parasite Eve 1 Remake, they announce it, and then the whole marketing cycle is like, we're not going to be third birthday, guys. We're not going to do that again. We understand that you all have concerns based on the last game in the series that came out, but it's going to be fine. Then I'll give it a go. I'll give it a try.
Right. And that would be, kind of the way to get me on board too. And honestly, to your point, it's kind of why, with Lightning Returns, that game was always kind of weird for me on that aspect too, because you kind of had like Lightning, being like a cat girl and like some of the other costumes. And I was just like, this is so not.
I like Lightning Returns a lot, but it feels like it is like that kind of game, just without like it feels like somebody at the last minute was like, whatever you do, don't make it like, make Lightning like cool and like make her powerful. Like she's like growing stronger throughout the game. Don't reduce her to like a weirdo like they did with Aya Brea, like.
But then they got rid of her emotions.
That's pretty weird, and I can't defend that. I think that is not so good. When I say I like Lightning Returns, I really like the gameplay.
The gameplay is good. I
don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've been wearing my lightning necklace.
Oh, I actually did not notice, so I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. That game is also a little sus, but I enjoy playing it as a video game.
It has probably the most fun battle system, actually, for a game that I ultimately didn't like that much. Like, I still do like the battle system as like a guilty pleasure for me, like 100%. So
yeah, for sure. And I would never like say anyone is wrong for having that opinion, because the game is a little weird.
Yeah, no, for sure.
A little weird.
All right, I think that is going to round off our discussion. Susie, I'm gonna let you plug yourself or plug anything that you're working on. Not that you need a plug from me. Congratulations on hitting 400k subscribers. God, you have blown up. I think when I first met you, you were at like 14k, and I was at like 3k, and we were like little YouTube babies. And now,
we were, but you know what? We were there for each other, and look at us now. I feel like we've made a lot of progress. As content creators, like carving out a path and creating identities for ourselves.
We're big YouTube adults now.
It's weird.
It's so cool.
You can find me on the Sphere Hunter YouTube channel, and also the Sphere Hunter on Twitch. On YouTube, it's the Sphere Space Hunter, but on Twitch, it's all one word. And then you can find me as Susie Hunter on Twitter. And I believe that's the same on Instagram if you want to look at my cool selfies. And I've got, right now, I've got a few videos in development that I've kind of teased in recent. My next video is a retrospective on Evil Within, which is the big return to survival horror from 2014. And that's kind of the subject of the video. Was it really a return to survival horror? I guess you'll have to wait and see in my video. But I will say, for the patrons, that preview is coming soon. So yeah, and the video is also just coming soon. And I have a big Halo video that I've actually shown bits and pieces to Night Sky Prince, and
it's good.
You seemed very excited about it. So.
I am. It's very, very, very good. All your work coming up is super exciting. I want to iterate again. just how much I have admired your growth. Seeing you, go from like your older videos. I remember like way older videos. It's just you talking in front of a webcam, nerding out about Final Fantasy, and I was just like, who is this girl? And then I followed you, and we started chatting, and we've become good friends ever since. So just thank you so much for being a great friend. Thank you for being a great content creator. I've enjoyed your growth, your videos, everything that you've done for me, both as a friend and as a creator, and just continuing to inspire me. Like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hopefully, because we haven't actually gotten to meet like face to face yet. We've only been online friends. So I'm hoping that as the situation like COVID gets better, maybe like a PAX or something, we'll actually be able to like.
I know. Like, hopefully at some point in the near future.
I would have set like E3, but that's not.
Yeah, that's not. I don't know if E3's ever coming back. Honestly,
it ain't ever coming back. Let's be real. That shit's gone.
And I will say thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate it, dude. And I just want to reiterate, I want to like give you that same energy back. Like, I feel like you have definitely become like one of the coolest voices in like FF content creation. You're definitely like my go-to whenever it comes to like any news. Like I'll like just go back and rewatch like older videos just to be like, oh my god, we didn't get that, or oh my god, it was actually way worse. But yeah, like I wanted to say too that I am so proud of you too, dude, because you really, like I said before, like you really like carved out a path for yourself, and like I don't know how you do it, but you're like one of the most consistent content creators like on the platform, and it's like all like good, which I think is great. And yeah, thank you for having me on this stream, because I've always wanted to do it, and we just needed to find the time to do it, but we did it.
We did.
I'm so happy.
We did.
So happy.
I am happy too. So wow, and thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you guys for watching us for all these hours. Really appreciate it.
All right, peace, you guys.